tonight's topic and get into the video. So, hey guys, welcome to the 18th episode of Let's Talk Comics, where myself and another co host in the comics community talk about one of the very many facets of comic books and the entirety of the medium. So, whether it be stories, creators, constructs, or adaptations, we hit it all. This week, we have a returning guest and our partner in crime, who we haven't seen in a little while, Comic Boom, man. It's great to have you back on.
Great to be here, Dark Knight. And of course, Happy New Year to you and Happy New Year to everyone watching who might end up picking up the stream.
Same to you, my friend. Let's hope for a good year filled with great comics and just stuff that we can enjoy. Hopefully, there's a lot less drama in the community.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you.
But you never know. The internet will be the internet. And so you guys know that whenever we start off an episode of Let's Talk Comics, myself and my co-hosts will always give our pull of the week. My friend, since you are our guest, you want to let the folks of the interwebs know what you were excited for picking up this week.
Well, I actually, I'm looking forward to, frankly, and I've only read half of it so far. Well, I'm really excited for Young Justice. I quite enjoyed Young Justice, but I love this cover so much on the Green Lantern, with Green Lantern saying you're under arrest, and it looks like he's saying it to God. This is exactly the type of comic book cover that I would expect Grant Morrison to do at some point in his career, and he's done it.
Have you seen that meme where it was like a quote from Grant Morrison talking about the book, how it's going to be a back to base police procedural, and then it just
Yeah.
shows that cover?
Yeah. And Cop versus God in the Slave Lords of the Stars. Yeah, I mean, this is a really good comic too, with Liam Sharp. I'm not going to say, it's funny because I never put this on my top Green Lantern, and it's in my top. I'm not even sure, did I put it in my top 20? I know I didn't. This isn't even in my top 20, like for my top 20 ongoing series, with my rule being, even if just one issue comes out, I'd put it on there. It's a little bit, I do find it a little bit confusing. You got to reread it 3 or 4 times to get into it. But once you do, the story is there. That's one of the reasons why I didn't review issue 2 and 3, because it's so hard. I found it difficult to read, but Morrison is an acquired taste. He's like a fine wine. You got to take the time to read it to really get the nuance. But I don't know. I got to give him credit on this. I mean, I don't often buy just for the cover, but this I had to get.
I mean, I really, just a side note on that, I really enjoy it. I don't know if I could call it like generally speaking, looking into my favorites, because only 2 issues came out during the year. But I dig that book. I think that space books are the best ones to really play around with story structure and dialogue, besides maybe like mythic and magical stories. And I think that gives Grant Morrison a really big ballpark to play in. I think Liam Sharp's artwork is awesome, and I love the page layouts in Green Lantern so far. I haven't read issue 3 yet, but issues 1 and 2 were interesting, and I love how it seems like Liam Sharp is changing his art a little bit gradually with every issue. And I know sometimes I will normally take issue with that, but I kind of like it in this one. And like you were saying with the story, it's low. Like the book is loaded with a lot, and then there's the story itself. But I feel like it's a book that you can reread like 2 or 3 times, and you're not like I don't know about you, but I'm not forcing myself to reread it. I'm rereading it because there's a lot to unpack and I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's I reread it because there's a lot to unpack. I will add the caveat that I don't always enjoy it. I just do it because I have this thing where if I read something twice and I still don't understand it bothers me immensely, because I feel stupid, and I hate feeling stupid. Yeah. And I refuse to believe that a comic book publishing company would publish something that doesn't make sense, even though I think they do sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I'll read it a 3rd time just out of frustration until and I don't know. Grant Morrison is hit and miss with me, and but I'm enjoying Green Lantern so far. It's just it is. I do find it a little challenging.
I don't know. I liked it because I think that when I read the second issue twice, um, and it's awkward because that the new show that I'm doing where I'm trying to be a little bit more brief and a little bit more succinct in my reviews. Um, I have a hard time thinking about reviewing Grant Morrison's Green Lantern because it's Grant Morrison. You
Yeah,
know, like I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. There are like I thought that the first issue was better than the second. I think the second is a little bit too kooky for me. But generally speaking, I enjoy it. I like when because I feel like I can understand like the foundations that Grant Morrison's putting on, but I think like when you really read into his stuff, there's a lot to it. Like for example, in the first issue, you remember when it was talking about like gamma lanterns and like microwave lanterns? A lot of people misconstrued that thinking that they were different cores. They're not different cores. They were species of green lanterns that were made out of microwaves. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
how Kilowog is like from
yeah,
Bolivac and like so on and so forth. Like they were species who were comprised of like microwaves and electrowaves and gamma waves. I was like, that's really out of the box. Like I know a lot of people were excited that they thought that was just, playing with different cores. I'm more excited that they're different species of aliens because we don't know what's out there in space. Obviously, it's probably not what Grant Morrison's writing, but it's limitless. And the fact that he's going to places like that, like there are species made out of different wavelengths of light that we can't even visually see. It makes sense, right? There are always going to be things that we're not going to comprehend. So
yeah,
it's very Grant Morrison. For me, I'm really excited for Young Justice. I am close to halfway through the first issue.
yeah.
I'm having a lot of fun with the story. I think it does have a couple awkward bits of dialogue that just feel very modern Bendis. But overall, the story seems fun. I'm excited to see where it goes. There are some things that so far are leaving me with questions, mostly about like the when and the where this is taking place. But it's only the first issue, so again, I'm gonna give Bendis an arc to answer some of those questions.
Yeah. Well,
But
he just for what it's worth, Bendis actually specifically stated that it even by his count there are 37, right? 37 unanswered questions at the end of issue 1. Bendis said he volunteered that information on Twitter in response to some constructive criticism because there's a lot of questions because there's a lot of continuity. I mean, think about it. I mean, all of a sudden, Impulse is back. Connor Kent's back. How is that possible? How is Wonder Girl back? Where were they? How does all this fit in the continuity? I mean, those are just honestly, I don't know what the I never came. I didn't have 37 questions, but apparently there are. Even Tim Drake. How does all this? How do these people all meld together? And in any event, he promises that they're going to all the questions will be answered, and but not all of them by the end of the 6th issue, which doesn't surprise me. It's Bendis, and to be honest with you, I don't even know if I care about continuity with Young Justice as long as it's entertaining. If it puts a smile on my face, I'll be happy. Like I'm so happy with Jenny Hex because I love Jonah Hex, and I really hope they do something with her character, and I'm really looking forward to the backstory on that. And even the full page advertisement for Wonder Comics showing the Wonder Twins and all that. The potential here is fantastic. I mean, Bendis and Gleason. Peter Tomasi wished him luck on Twitter. Bendis himself said in an interview that he wanted to maybe partner up with Gleason because he knew that fans love Tomasi and Gleason, and so he basically openly admitted he wanted to feel some of that love, and so he proposed. They've had Young Justice in the thing for quite a while, and I don't know. It's really good. And I just want to say that I want to accuse you of deliberately you deliberately created an undertone because I think that you just don't want to admit that maybe Bendis wrote something good for DC.
no, I'm enjoying it so far. I even said that. I was like, I was enjoying it. I was just picking out a couple of the small flaws I'd noticed.
But you can't say the words, can you?
What?
Bendis did a good job on issue 1. Can
I
you say
haven't finished reading it yet.
it? So you won't say it.
No, the first issue of Man of Steel was good.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great issue. I've reviewed it. That's on the internet. Like, you can never take that away. The first issue of Man of Steel was very good. I enjoyed that. This issue's good. I mean, so far it's good. I'm enjoying it. There are questions that I have, but again, like the questions that I have don't ultimately diminish from my opinion of the book so far because it's the first issue. He's not going to answer all of my questions in the first issue, or else I'm not going to come back to reread to continue to read the book.
Yeah.
So, it's smart. I think that I mean, I don't even want to start kind of adding too much conjecture because I'm sure we'll get into that at some point in the year. But I think that as long as he can answer the questions, we'll be off to a good start.
Yeah.
But I'm like I said, it's my poll of the week. I'm excited to finish reading it. Gleason's art's spectacular. I'm really glad to see him. I think Gleason does really well when he draws like adolescent and teenage characters more than anything else. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited to finish it. Another little shout out I'm gonna have to give is Criminal Number One by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. This was totally based on a recommendation from my buddy Taylor, who's been on the show before. And, I love Brubaker. I've been really, really having a massive want to read his material. And since I know he's not going to be coming back to the big two anytime in the near future, if the future at all, I was recommended and told that this is a good starting on point for someone who hasn't read his crime noir stuff through Image. So I'm really, really excited to read that book.
Yeah, I've always collected Criminal. I've collected Criminal back from the beginning. I own 2 of the hardcovers even. I love it. Also, Ed Brubaker's Kill or Be Killed. It never made my top 35 list, only because, to be honest, I got a little tired of the crime noir sort of thing, but it was still very good. Kill or Be Killed is a really good Ed Brubaker story, and Sean Phillips on art is just really fantastic.
Yeah, so that's exciting. But we've talked a lot about a couple things that came out this week, 2019, first comic book week of 2019. Let's get into it. So, for those of you that are just joining us tonight, we're going to be talking about our favorite new series of 2019 or 2018. I'm sorry. So it's series that started in 2018. They can also be new creative teams hopping on to existing books. And I wanted to make sure to include that because there are always going to be books, for example, like Detective Comics, like Action Comics, that are not going to renumber themselves. But new creative teams really push new status quos most of the time. And it's like writing a new series without the number 1 in front of the book. So I wanted to make sure to include it. Boom, since you're the guest, do you want to start us off? What's one of the books that really stood out to you that started it up in 2018?
Well, I don't know if I mean, I actually have 1 through 20 here, and I realize we're not going to talk about 20 comics, but do you want to start? Do you want me to just pick one at random that I thought was good, or do you want to start number 1 or my number 1?
Whatever you feel like talking about. You just a new series or a new arc, new creative.
I'll start. There's a lot of good series, but I just want to say that there was 7 criteria that I used when I chose my top 20, because and that is the writing, obviously the writing, the art, included in the covers, the variant covers, accessibility to new readers, consistency from issue to issue, like every issue being good, not just up and down, self-contained stories. I also look at how new, novel the story is, and also just good old-fashioned buzz advertising. And overall, for me, I had to give it to, and I'm a DC guy, had to give it to Immortal Hulk, Al Ewing, because this is an issue that, Marvel came out of 2017 last year. They're in terms of PR, they had a disastrous 2017. A lot of people were skeptical of Marvel. And then Al Ewing was always a good writer, but Al Ewing had a reputation for writing comics that didn't sell. And that changed with Immortal Hulk. And with Joe Bennett on the art, interiors, and of course Alex Ross. Marvel really made the right decision. CB made the right decision getting Alex Ross, paying him bigger bucks to do the covers on the Hulk. This literally had everything. It had if you can believe this, a fresh take on the Hulk, a zombie-like Hulk. He turns into the Hulk when he dies. David Banner has a darker take. the Hulk literally ends up in hell. This latest issue, that's the arc. Incredibly enough, each individual issue, I kid you not is actually its own self-contained issue.
Hmm.
You could actually enjoy each individual issue independent of the fact that it's all part of a larger narrative. That's what is so incredible about it. And it's just it was just it's always first on my pull. It was always first because on average I maybe take a minimum of 15 to 20 comics home a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always the first thing I'd read.
Yeah,
It didn't matter. And the thing is, you and I review, okay, I mean, I'll review all the comics I review. I do happen to review Hulk, but a lot of the comics that I normally review, I don't like. Like, I don't read Tom King's Batman. It's usually one of the last things I read often because I don't want to, yet I'll review it just because it's Batman and it's just, it's something that, I like to bitch about. Let's be honest. But no, I got to give credit where credit's due, and and just buzz and hit all the criteria I'm talking about: consistency, buzz, accessibility, art, writing. I mean, this is the full package.
No, I agree with you 100%. And you know what? I have never read before this a solo Hulk title ever in my life. I mean, unless you count World War Hulk, which was an event. I love this book, and the beautiful thing is, from what I hear from a lot of longstanding Hulk fans, there's a lot more to appreciate for them. But at the same time, me being a brand new Hulk fan, like going into this, or not even being a fan of the character going into this, I'm walking out a fan. I love this book, and I feel like whatever I'm missing makes me more intrigued to learn about what I'm thinking about. You know what I mean? Like, there are questions that I have that make me want to go back and read. They're not questions that make me diminish the quality of the story. You know what I mean? Like it's such a good book. And like, let me briefly get out the Alex Ross main covers on the book are spectacular. Like, when they solicited this book, I was not interested.
Yeah.
And then they released the Alex Ross variant covers, and I just lost my mind. And then, then I heard the synopsis that, it was literally Immortal Hulk who, Hulk it's like Werewolf Hulk. He takes over at night.
Yeah.
And I love in this series, I feel like the dynamic between Bruce and the Hulk are very, very different in this series versus anything else I've ever seen the Hulk in. It's unique. The story kind of meshes sci-fi, and horror together. Joe Bennett does an excellent job on the internal pencils. And there was even that one issue. You remember that one issue where everybody was telling like their experience with the Hulk and the irradiated gamma patients, and every story or every perspective was a different artist.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It really is. And just to be clear, it's the standard covers that are Alex Ross. They're not even variants, so we should correct that. And that's the other thing that I think's inspired. To me, the best cover shouldn't be a variant. The best cover should be the standard cover that everyone gets. I've always believed that, and that's what I love about this. The best covers are the standard covers. They don't need variants. Why do you need variants when you got Alex Ross on the standard cover? You don't.
Right.
Incredibly enough, they still have some variant covers for it, and I think that's such a waste.
And you know what I think too? I think that moving Alex Ross from Spider-Man onto Hulk is so much more fitting. Because as great and bombastic as Spider-Man is, I feel like it's just not something that can take full advantage of Alex Ross. Whereas the Immortal Hulk, like the spectacle that is the Hulk, and especially this new fresh take that Al Ewing is bringing to it, is captured perfectly in the Alex Ross covers. I mean, I used part of the first issue cover for this thumbnail. Like, I love that image of Hulk coming up out of Bruce Banner's grave. And the beautiful thing is, it takes a very, mixed a very mixed reviewed event in Secret Empire and runs with it. It's just like, I'm not going to be lazy and act like it didn't happen. It happened, and I think he made it better by doing so.
Yeah, and even part of the buzz I mentioned, like, the buzz factor is always a wild card factor that I take into consideration when I do a ranking. Even the Avengers No Surrender series now, I like the buzz because now the first appearance of Immortal Hulk is worth some money. So as the collector side of me likes that too, because that's part of the buzz. And there's because we all like to speculate a little bit with our comics, even though it might not necessarily be something that I consider myself to be an expert on. I like to speculate once in a while, and it's just good buzz. It's just good buzz. They have editors' notes, and it makes you wonder what the history of the Immortal Hulk is, and you can go back, and it's created a mystery. We don't know what the origin is, but people are looking for the first appearances. People are hunting those back issues. That's all because of the popularity of the comic book, and that's you don't see that very often anymore. The back issue market nowadays is practically dead, and for once we're getting it's pretty sad right now that most people love back issues just for the covers. The biggest back issues that people go and collect from the past year, it's all for variant covers. It's rare for people to look for a back issue because of story content.
Right.
You
And
saw it with
it's
Venom.
also like that in first appearances.
Yeah. I mean, the last year probably that I got respect for, that's one another reason why I respect Donny Cates and Venom. He increased people want to get that his Null's first appearance in Thor, right? Now
Mhm.
people want to get the Immortal Hulk's first appearance in Avengers No Surrender. And it's just another one of those factors.
Yeah, I agree. So speaking of that, let's transition into Venom because I know that's been a really hyped up series this year. A lot of people are really giving Donny Cates, credits as like the second coming to Marvel. I know you've read extensively, and I know you very much enjoy Venom. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Venom is a character that I literally, again, the big criteria of the Venom, by the way, is number 3 on my list. First is Immortal Hulk, second is Doomsday Clock, third is Venom. So Venom is number 3, and
Mhm.
I literally don't have any baggage on Venom. I happen to have Venom's first appearance because I've been collecting comics a long time. So back in the day, I was never a big fan of Venom, but 2018 was the year of Venom. Not only did Donny Cates get me loving Venom solely because of his writing. I thought Venom is really a stupid character, but I read the first issue of Venom. I hear all the hype. I heard the buzz. So I hear buzz. I buy the comic. I bought the
Right.
comic. Oh my God, this is really good stuff.
Yeah.
For the first time, he's got a rich history. And then a funny thing happened. The movie was actually good. I
Yeah.
enjoyed the movie, and I realized I realized Venom was on some people's worst movies of 2018, but for me, it's not on my best movies of 2000. But it was an entertaining movie. It surprised me how much I enjoyed it. I went in with no expectations to the Venom movie, and then in any event, it, the whole thing. It's just to me, 2018 is the year of Venom, and it's the year of Aquaman. And both their comics and the movies are good and surprise people, and they're building on that, and they're going with it. And Donny Cates, man, the way he's building the rich mythology, literally a mythology, because it's the Venom symbiote is actually linked to that the god Null, and then tying it into the Thor mythos with the sword. And forgive me, I'm not as knowledgeable of Marvel lore as I am of DC, but I don't need to be. That's what I like about Donny Cates. He's the Jeff Johns of the Marvel universe. I can sit back and just read, and he explains it enough that I don't necessarily need to read the comic twice.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can see why a lot of people like Venom. Admittedly, I might be in the small minority that I think it's a little bit too overhyped. And I think that the reason people love it so much is because it's a good book, and people are just not used to Venom being a legitimately good book. It is a good book.
Yeah.
I will not ever take that away. The art is spectacular, by the way. Ryan Stegman knocks it out of the house or
Thank you
knocks
for
it out of the
mentioning
park.
that. Yeah,
Huh?
I said thank you for mentioning Ryan Stegman. I should have mentioned him. He's a great artist. Yeah.
Yeah, he knocks it out of the park. And I think it's a good book. It's fun. For me personally, there's nothing about the book that makes me so for me, like if I'm gonna give a book like a 10 out of 10, like something that really does it, not only does the writing have to be good, the scripting, the dialogue, the plot, the general storytelling, the collaboration between writer and artist, but there has to be something about the book that just gets me childishly emotional. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I have not gotten that. And it could just be because honestly, I don't care about Venom, and I didn't going into the Donny Cates run. I cannot take away that it is a good book. It is a good book. It is a well done book. But for me, I think it's a little bit overblown. But again, this isn't a negative. I'm not talking about it like I talked about Bendis' Superman.
Yeah.
I can
No.
see, yeah, I can see
Yeah.
why everybody likes Venom so
Yeah.
much, though.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I 100% agree with you that Venom is an overbloated character. Prior to Donny Cates redoing Venom, it was Venomverse. Marvel had Venomverse. I hated Venomverse, and that was an event, and it was an event that was reviled. A lot of people didn't like it, and I picked up the first issue. It was terrible. I hated it. It reinforced everything I hated about Venom. That's why Donny Cates' Venom impressed me so much. He was literally, he had all the odds against him. He was taking a character that I think had just come off a very badly written series that was reviled, that most people weren't big fans of. It was just a big character thing, as at least that was my impression reading stuff online. And he actually, he came off of Thanos Wins, and of course everyone loved Thanos. And I thought, geez, you know what? I mean, you're trying to make a character like Venom, you're gonna have to really hit this out of the park, because it's Venom. That's what matters. It's Venom. Like, really? You're gonna do Venom? It's like, wow. That's why it only impresses me more, quite frankly, that he was able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, again, this isn't me trying to storm on anybody's parade, because I can totally acknowledge that Venom is a well done book. I think I was also a little bit sour that they had like retconned that there were symbiotes on Earth before Spider-Man brought it back after Secret Wars. That was like me as a Marvel fan being like, I prefer the original origin of the symbiote, but I guess in respect to its travels to Earth. But yeah, I mean, it's a well done book. I know why everyone likes it. The story is interesting. They're taking Venom into new places, and it's not just the 90s romp that everybody had come to expect from Venom. So I can definitely see that. But I think we've gone on with Venom. Another character you'd mentioned was Aquaman, and I know there's not a hell of a lot to talk about in terms of new series. Dan Abnett for the most part was continuing his run on Aquaman. I guess if you want to kind of mix that in with the Aquaman Drowned Earth storyline, because that was both Aquaman and Justice League, and then we did get Aquaman, what, number 43? By Kelly Sue DeConnick and Robson Roca. Obviously, one issue doesn't give us a hell of a lot to talk of, but I mean, I think comic-wise, I don't think Aquaman had anything particularly bad.
Yeah, I would say consistent. That's why it ranked for me. It was I put it at number 11 for me. It's so consistent. It was consistently good. It never had an issue that sucked. Like, I mean, and to be honest with you, the vast majority of comic books had at least one comic this year that I just really didn't like.
Yeah,
but Aquaman was consistently at least good.
No, I think
good to great.
I think because again, I don't want to talk too much about Abnett, because Abnett started his run far before 2018.
Yeah,
but he was incredibly consistent. Drowned Earth, I liked the idea of the story, and I enjoyed the beginning of it. Again, the Justice League Drowned Earth crossover story. I think that story just got really slowed down by everything they were trying to do. We were getting to the point, I don't know if you noticed, where it seemed the first quarter of every issue was literally the last couple pages of the issue previous, like almost exactly to a T, with a different artist. I also don't like the inconsistencies of the art on that book. Again, the idea for the story, again, was another flaw in Scott Snyder's Justice League, where he has some really interesting ideas that he does not execute, because it's like, when you're eating something good and you're full, you're full, but you keep going anyways, and then you really regret it later. That's kind of what Justice League feels like, and I think Drowned Earth was definitely respective to that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was Drowned Earth. I thought it disappointed near the end there. I mean, I understood what it was getting at, and it was they needed some way to lead into Kelly Sue DeConnick's run, and at least with first issues are an indication. Kelly Sue DeConnick, I was quite impressed with her first issue of Aquaman, which in hindsight probably shouldn't surprise me, because I really enjoyed Kelly Sue DeConnick's Bitch Planet.
Mm-hmm.
I quite enjoyed Bitch Planet. Uh, but yeah, no, Aquaman. Like I said, it's like I said, it doesn't really. I don't get a huge like adrenaline rush when I think of Aquaman comics, but it was consistently entertaining, and I look forward to reading it whenever it came out, and again, I just can't say that for the vast majority of comics I get weekly.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, Kelly Sue DeConnick's first issue on Aquaman was pretty strong. Um, I reviewed it on my last episode of Comics Insider, and I gave it like an 8.3, and that's a solid rating. I think that Kelly Sue DeConnick's Aquaman, her first issue falls victim to, what I'd call the first issue itis, a lot of exposition. It's a little bit slow. We're just kind of figuring out what she's going to be doing, where she's going to be going with it. That didn't deter me too much, because I can acknowledge that I think a first issue, quite frankly, requires some level of exposition when you want to set up something as big as what Kelly Sue seems to be setting up,
Mm-hmm.
especially after the events of Drowned Earth. But I will say I'm definitely interested in where she seems to be going. I think that the character interactions in this book are really strong, considering we only had one returning character, and it was Aquaman. And yet it was an Aquaman Arthur Curry with no memory, with no, semblance. He was not the regal King Arthur that we knew from the comic books previous, because he didn't have the memories that culminated into making him the character that he was, the person that he was.
He's
Uh,
Aurelio,
yeah, Arauzio, yeah.
Aurelio, or whatever. Yeah, something.
Yeah, no,
Roll the R.
it was a fun Arauzio, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Um it was a fun book though. I'm really, really interested in the mythology that they're crafting with all of these like respective sea deities or figures of the sea washing up on this island. And like ironically, none of them, even though like they're all able to manipulate the sea or they're all affiliated with some sort of power related to the sea. They're unable to get off the island, or I wonder if they're just unwilling to get off the island. Maybe they find it better that they don't remember as much of their old lives. But I mean, it just seems like it's going to be a fun story that's going to be building on Aquaman's mythos, or just general mythos of the seas in the DC universe. Art was also absolutely beautiful. Robson Rocco knocks it out of the park. More recently this year, he did a couple issues of Adam Glass's Teen Titans, where I know you guys can barely see it, but this is the original art page from Teen Titans Special #1, where Damian Wayne is like hanging over Black Mask while he's in the sauna, and he's like, "Boo." And that's also done by Robson Roca. So if it's any indication of how much I like his art, I bought one of his original pages, and this book was no exception. So it was a well done first issue. I think Kelly Sue DeConnick did a solid job with Robson Roca.
Yeah. That actually leads me into I put number 12 on my list of top was Teen Titans because of Adam Glass coming on issue 20. That Adam Glass and the artist I don't even know who the artist is.
Bernard Chang's done most
Bernard,
of the art.
thank you. Yeah, but really good with the new creative team and the new lineup for the Teen Titans, particularly the latest issue with the origin of Crush, issue 25. Very well done. Teen Titans is way better than it was before. I'm quite enjoying it. I wasn't enjoying it beforehand. To me, the change up of the creative Adam Glass, he seemed to come out of nowhere. I didn't even know. I hadn't even heard of the guy, to be honest. What did he do before?
He actually did more recently. He did the New 52 Suicide Squad reboot. That's like pretty universally hated. He's kind of like a Scott Lobdell. Like he came from TV, and like a lot of people really don't like his stuff. But there's a couple like diamonds that he wrote that not a lot of people talk about that are generally pretty good. I don't know. I mean, the one thing I really like about Adam Glass is that he's not afraid, because he comes from TV over comics. He's not afraid to break status quo. And I think with Teen Titans, they've been a fairly static group these last couple years. And I think that he's taking these liberties in places that liberties can be taken, and he's doing them sensibly. I know a lot of people were bitching and moaning about how Damian Wayne is being angsty. I'm like, Damian Wayne's a teenager.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? There's going to be some level of character regression. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Damien's always kind of a little. He's kind of a narcissist. He's a 10-year-old. Well, he's a 13-year-old, or what is he now? 13, 14?
13.
13-year-old narcissist. So yeah, he's going to be a little angsty too. He's still a
Well,
teenager.
well, it's like regardless, you know, I know a lot of people you remember like spoilers for a book that came out like 6, 7, 8 months ago. But like when you found out that he was keeping all of those villains captive inside of the new Teen Titans base, and I'm like, he pretty much is like doing the Teen Titans equivalent of the fuck Batman line. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he's 13, he's just being an angsty little snot, you know, because a lot of people were like, oh, well, he was being developed this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, yeah, I was cool when I was like 10 or 11, but by the time I was 13 or 14, I also became a little snot. So, you know, I can totally understand it. And it's him trying to break away from Batman. Again, I remember when they were talking about like this, when they were soliciting this new series, they were calling it like a Teen Tyrant type of series. You know, it's just, and I'm happy with it. You know what? Bernard Chang's doing some of his best art that he's done in a while. I think it far exceeds what he was doing on both Nightwing with Sam Humphries and Batman Beyond with Dan Jurgens. I like that we're not afraid to break the mold. I think that Adam Glass has a pretty good handle on the characters. And unlike what he was doing in the New 52, it seems like he's paying attention to what's going on around him. So if he keeps doing that, he's going to keep making a good book. That's all I have to say. And I also agree with you. I think Ben Percy's Teen Titans were frankly getting really, really stale.
Yeah, I didn't even know who I stopped paying attention after a while. So yeah, Ben Percy, he's I didn't mind his Green Arrow arc, but even that sort of dragged on a little bit. But in any event, what's I don't even know this. What's your number one comic? Or are you saving that in your holster for later? Do you have one?
God. I don't know. We were talking before. I feel like there's more I need to read. I don't know if I can give you like my favorite comic. My favorite new comic of 2018. Like,
Well, I mean, I know that. Well, I would guess for you consistently. I mean, I know you enjoy Detective, and you didn't. You weren't a huge fan of Robinson, but you didn't mind. You certainly love Tomasi now on Detective. And
yeah,
then
I mean,
even
let me say this. If Tomasi had like one or two more issues, I would definitely say that it was my favorite series of the year. The only reason I can't just immediately say yes is because I don't think like we've had a lot of time with it. However, I will say I think out of every other new series or new creative team jumping on a book, new direction for a book, Tamashi's has by far elicited the most positive reaction out of anybody else or out of any other book coming out in comics right now.
I would challenge that. First of all, I love Detective Comics, but I would say that Shazam #1 got a lot of positive press too.
No, I'm saying from me.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm saying from me. And we'll go into Shazam, but here's the thing: Detective 994 and 995. 994, I think, is a great, great, great book for new and Batman fans alike. New and old Batman fans alike. 994. It just begins with such an intriguing mystery. You know what I mean? From the get go, we get the quote unquote dead bodies of Thomas and Martha Wayne floating in a tank on the anniversary of their death, which also marks the first case that both Batman and Jim Gordon have ever done in Gotham. I think that Peter Tomasi fundamentally has an understanding of who Bruce is, how he acts, his mannerisms. He knows Batman. The guy knows Batman. And we've been reading a main Batman title for over 2 years now that has continuously jumped on and off as to whether or not he understands the character of Batman. And this, by far for me, has shown me all of the has been the most efficient in giving me every single layer of Batman as a character. His obsession, his willfulness, his humanity, his intellect, his drive, all of the layers of Batman in the first issue alone.
Yeah,
I got all of that. And not only did that happen, we got a beginning, we got a middle, and we got a bomb-ass cliffhanger that made me want to not read anything else until I read the next issue of Detective Comics. It is so good. And let me mention this too. Detective Comics number 994 might be my favorite thing that Doug Manx ever drawn. I think it's the cleanest comic book he has ever drawn. I've always loved his work, and I love his work regardless of what I'm about to say. But I think sometimes he puts lines in like faces and in other things where lines don't need to be. You know, that was one of my biggest issues with the little stints he did on Tomasi's Superman run. But this is some of the cleanest artwork I've ever seen from him, ever.
I
Uh,
I I have to. Well, I mean, I can repeat everything. I don't disagree with a thing you said. I agree wholeheartedly, and I can't think of a better issue to do. I can't think of a better story arc than to have for a countdown to 1,000.
nope.
Because, like you said, it literally in 994 alone, it captured the essence of all those aspects of Batman, the family aspect, the tragedy of of the trauma that led him to take up the mantle of the Bat, the his love for Alfred, for Leslie Tompkins, his maternal figure, his paternal figure, epitomized by Leslie Tompkins, Alfred, the death of his parents, the mark of Zorro, the with 995 ending with Alfred being the victim of an attack, and all of it wrapped up in a mystery that is genuinely intriguing. And I still think, by the way, that he's going to reveal to Gordon his secret identity. I still think that's going to happen
I would
before.
be so fine with that.
Yeah.
I would be so, and you know what, man? The beautiful thing is, Tomasi as a writer has never given me a reason to be skeptical of him. You know, I will laud and hail Scott Snyder until the freaking cows come home. But there are things of his that I've read that have made me skeptical. Tomasi just delivers on every single freaking level. I will admit that I think 995 is a lot more service to pre-existing Batman fans. You know, if you're new to Batman, there's a good chance that you've had little exposure to Leslie Tompkins, who I think, the circumstances surrounding what happened to her in the previous issue are the main concern of 995. But as a Batman fan, I'm not going to lie, like, I got a little bit glassy. And the beautiful thing here is that I feel like Detective Comics 994 and 995 are the perfect example of a writer and artist working together, because not only do we see how emotionally disconnected Bruce is, but that he still feels emotions. You know what I mean? You can see it in his face and the way he articulates himself before and after. Spoiler. So I'm going to give anybody a chance to mute this real quick. Before and after Leslie Tompkins dies, you can see how driven and how obsessed he is in saving her. You know why? Because Batman has to save everybody. And you know what keeps him up at night? You know what keeps him doing this? It's because he knows he'll never save everybody, but he has to try.
And yeah, and I focused on that in my review, exactly what you just said. This 2-page spread drawn by Doug Mankey, where every time he's using he shocks her to try to shock her heart to beating again. Every time he says clear, they show a flashback of him as a younger Bruce Wayne with some scene with Leslie Tompkins and the importance that he had in his life. And you could see as she's dying, he has memories of what he's losing and of how important she is in his life. And then when that's followed by him closing her eyes, I mean, like I said, no, it's easy to get glassy eyed. And even Alfred tries to be so stoic, but he sheds a tear too as he goes to get, grab a tea. So yeah, it's just just a brutally heartfelt, gut wrenching issues. And the longer you've been collecting Batman, and the more I think the more gut wrenching it is, especially if you're connected with the characters. But even if you're not, the beauty of Tomasi, the brilliance of his writing is that in that 2-page spread, you feel for Bruce Wayne already, because you know how much he loves Leslie Tompkins. So even if you don't know who Leslie Tompkins is, you're going to have that connection and feel that reading the story. And we're only 2 issues in.
Yeah. No, like I said, these are 2 of the best Batman issues that I've read all year. I love them. And those of you watching Boom, I know if I am not biased in the sense that if I read a Batman book, I'm not always going to say it's good. I will never say that. In fact, I'll probably grill Batman the hardest if it's not good. And this was, excuse my French, fucking spectacular. This book has been so good. I read this before. Like, again, we talked previously about how I'm falling behind on comics. This is the only book right now that I will, no matter how late it is, if I have to be to work to open my place in the morning, I'm reading this and I don't care. And I am so incredibly satisfied. And you know what? The beautiful thing is, like you were saying, whatever this is already on its way to being the perfect lead up to Detective 1000, because whoever the hell is messing with Batman is messing with him hard, real hard, down to the most, and whoever this is knows Batman on the most fundamental basic levels.
Yeah.
And he's, again, pardon my French, he's just fucking with him continuously. And I am assuming that this is all going to culminate in 1000, and it makes me really excited to see what Bruce is going to do. How is he going to overcome this? How is this going to change him for the future? The writing's immaculate. Again, I talk a lot about dialogue. I think Tomasi just writes a perfect Bruce Wayne. Every word that comes out of his mouth is perfect. You can see, like, and again, the way he's collaborating with Mank, and you can see that, for example, when in 994, when he's investigating the supposed dead bodies of his parents, you can see in the way that he's talking and the way that he's like, the way that Mankey's drawing him is that he's really kind of really focusing on reserving himself. He almost one of the things that I think you had mentioned, it might have been you, that he almost revealed his identity to Gordon.
Yes.
And it's like he was so distracted by what was, and Batman doesn't do that. You know what I mean? It's not, I don't think that was the negligence on the part of the writer.
Yeah.
I think that was only to accent the fact that, yes, Batman has to be stoic because Batman, but whatever's happened shook him up. Whoever's doing this knows everything about him. And I talked about in my review that the bullet wounds didn't defer a single centimeter from the original open and exit wounds of the Waynes when they got shot. All of the clothes were perfect, down to the make, the model, the brand. There was a facsimile of the original playbill for the Mark of Zorro. It was perfect.
Yeah, no, it's good, and I do, and I reiterate again. I think that the theme of family, and I think it's going to play out that. I think it's going to be revealed that Gordon always knew that Bruce Wayne was Batman. I think, because I don't think it's. I've always believed that. That's always been my belief, and I'm not alone in that. Lots of people think that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Commissioner Gordon has always known that Bruce Wayne is Batman. He's just played stupid. And I know some stories contradict that. I'm well aware of that. But in my mind,
I'd be fine if he did it, because it'd just be giving a big middle finger to Tom King's Batman right now, and I'm totally okay with that. I think that to tag on to what you were saying, I think it embraces more than his family. I think it just embraces his history. I think I think Tomasi, in a similar vein as Grant Morrison, is just acknowledging the fact that there are all these incredible stories that exist in, the myth that is Batman. You know what I mean? Like I would say the DC Comics heroes, more so than any other fictional and then any other fictional creations, are our American myth. They are our champions. We know they're not real, and we've known that from the onset. But you know what? You don't go up to a little kid and you don't motivate them by talking to God. I never went up to my little cousin and said, "You're going to grow strong to be up like you're going to grow." Okay, that's interesting. Sorry, I just got a really weird comment in the chat. But I think that we're just going to embrace the history of the character and how much has come before, and move forward acknowledging all of that and kind of making that culminate into one great story.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I'm going to remove that chat. That was interesting.
Some vulgarity or what?
Did you see that?
No, I'm not. I don't have a. I
Oh
can't access the
boy.
chat.
Yeah, yeah. Some okie dude responds with "What the fuck." This has got to be a troll. This has got to be a troll. I'm not gonna give it airtime. We'll talk about it after. But oh, holy shit, that was the weirdest comment I've ever gotten ever. Um, Yeah, no. So yeah, Detective. I was like, that totally derailed me. Detective Comics is great. If you guys like Batman, if you want to get into Batman, it's absolutely perfect. You could know nothing. You could know very little but Batman's origin story and hop into 994 and totally appreciate it. Doug Mank's doing some of the best art of his career. That splash page from 994 is currently my lock screen on my phone. It's absolutely stunning. But yeah, I could go on for days about this. I know again, in the beginning of that conversation, we had mentioned Shazam. Do you want to go into Shazam?
Well, just very briefly, because like I said, that one too also just has one issue, but I do think that um, one of the shortcomings of Shazam is going to be the delays.
Mm.
If the delays continue, but uh, hopefully that won't be the case. But Shazam is really good. I mean, I Shazam was Jeff Johns writes young Billy Batson so well. Dale Eaglesham on the art was just tremendous. The sense of family, and again, there's that theme again of family, and when DC seems to move toward it, they seem to get rave reviews, and yeah, when they move away from it, I think they do so at their peril. But Billy Batson, he's like, he shares the Shazam power with all his basically brothers and sisters in the orphanage, not his actual brothers and sisters, but just other other kids at the orphanage and or in the pardon me their foster family, and and every time they become when they say Shazam, they become the best aspects of themselves, the best that they can be, and it's like wish fulfillment, and it's perfect, and it's there's something wonderful about it, and it's like and they all have their own personalities, and it's just so well written, and I think that I think it's going to do. I think it's going to be better than Young Justice. I think it's going to be better than probably the Wonder Comics. It should be, I think, part of the Wonder Comics line, or maybe it is, but I don't think it's advertised as that. It's just really well done. Have you read it?
Yeah, Shazam number one. I read it. It was pretty good. I think that a lot of the major complaints about it were regarding how it didn't feel as much like Jeff Johns' original take in the New 52. But I think it was good. I enjoyed it. I think that for all the people that gave the New 52 Shazam backups from the Justice League story shit were the ones that were upset that we were getting the character and it didn't feel like the one that people had grown to love. But you know what? To be quite frank, I would never want to read a book about the perfect child. I would never want to read a book about a perfect character in general because it doesn't give them anywhere to go. And
Mm,
especially when you're dealing with a child, you're starting the book because you want to follow the ride, right? Like
mm,
you want to take that trip with them and watch this character develop. And I love that there's a pretty stark contrast between what Jeff Johns was writing in Billy Batson, in the New 52 and what he's doing now. Because
yeah,
where he finished off in the New 52 makes it very plausible to pick up where we're picking up a year later. A year, in an adolescent's life is a long time.
it
And
is.
I love that we're really embracing the family aspect. Again, it's ultimately wish fulfillment and that the power of Shazam is bringing out the best in these kids. The art is great. Dale Eaglesham does a great job. I think for me, some of the dialogue is just a little bit too on the nose. It felt like I was watching a Christmas special. You know, it was good. I enjoyed it, and I can definitely let it go. But for me, some of it just felt very forced. It just felt like they were really shoving the family down my throat instead of organically letting it happen. So, again, that's not a huge gripe. But it was a fun book. I think it was a great starting point. I think in terms of the plot and the narrative, I'm really excited for where we're going to go from here. That last page reveal was great. And another thing that I don't think a lot of people are mentioning, I think the backup was excellent. I think the backup was absolutely fantastic, and it
Yeah,
really coattails on the direction that Jeff Johns is going with these characters. You know, I think they're all of these kids are going to become relatable to the to a number of different readers on different levels, and I think we're all going to find a member of the Shazam family that we can relate to.
Yeah.
So it adds a lot more weight to me as the reader for this book.
Yeah. And just as a quick comment, and I made the comment too, you know, at least in the New 52, and I quite enjoy the backup features that formed the original Shazam story in the New 52. Shazam is actually the protector of magic. He
Right.
was in the New 52. And I find that very interesting because from a continuity perspective, magic right now is in a complete state of chaos in the DC universe. And yet I don't think they're clearly going in a very, very different direction with regard to magic in the Shazam series. Like they're certainly not connecting it to Justice League Dark or the upside down man of you know, coming out of the source wall. It very much seems to be almost like Harry Potter-ish approach to the characters. They all have their different aspects of the Shazam power, and they have the magic lands that I think they're going to be visiting because they had that map that they saw in the subway at the end of Shazam #1 before that reveal you're talking about. And so and on the map was it teased Amethyst, like Princess of Gemworld, and there's other areas there from DC lore. And that's classic Jeff Johns. You know, he's utilizing and bringing in and incorporating aspects of the DC universe. And I like it. I really like it. It's almost as if you can see the difference between Jeff Johns' vision of the future of the DC universe versus maybe Dan Didio.
Yep.
You really can see it because you just know that if Jeff Johns had the power and maybe the time and the inclination, that we would probably have a very different looking, larger mainstream DC universe than the darker one we have now. Not that it's bad what we have now, because I think we're getting the best of all worlds, and I kind of like that in a way, because I started off not liking the darkness, but then, you know, Witching Hour turned me a bit. I kind of liked it. Justice League Dark I'm enjoying, so I'm actually enjoying the darkness. I'm enjoying the light, and DC's managed in 2018 to really actually get me on board of what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I don't want to go too far into like the tonality of the overall DC universe, because I honestly think that in terms of quality, DC's been on a subtle decline the last couple, I would say even the last year, just versus, you know, how strong they had been going for, you know, nearly the first 2 years of Rebirth.
Yeah.
But I think that the tone of Shazam is really refreshing. Again, I think one of the cons to the story is that Jeff Johns is leaning a little bit too hard, you know, into it. It feels a bit much, and I think that, you know, Jeff Johns isn't one. Jeff Johns isn't really one to overdo anything, you know. And anything that I've read, it's either for him he plays things very moderately and tastefully. So it was a little bit weird, you know, for me that it just again it felt like a Hallmark Christmas special at times with some of the dialogue. But I really enjoy where the story's going. I like the direction for sure where we're taking the character. And again, I'm definitely going to pick up issue 2. I liked the book a lot. Uh, However, I will say I think that there were better issue 1s that came out this year.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. Do you want me to mention another one then, or?
Sure, yeah, if you'd like.
Uh, I guess we can talk about. It was #2 on my list, and that was Doomsday Clock. And I say this with some caveats because, frankly, in terms of the delays, it's so delayed. It's going to be 2 full years before this series finally ends. But I don't know. With the writing was so good. This latest issue 9 it's finally, the story's really starting to really take shape. The art by Gary Frank's fantastic, and it's dare I say it's worth the wait. Although this is a long wait between issues,
Mm.
it's I really love, you see the love of Superman that Jeff Johns has. I love how it's really this series really raises how spectacular and beloved Superman is in the DC universe,
Mhm.
juxtaposing that against the darkness of the Watchmen universe, and just the power of Superman as an icon and as just as an idea really particularly shone through in this latest issue. And how this is all going to play out, I don't know. It's now well established that Doomsday Clock is no longer going to be leading into a brighter DC universe, a DC rebirth. That's no longer on the table. That's been sort of confirmed by two different sources from what my understanding is. But nonetheless, I'm so curious to know who Dr. Manhattan is, what his secrets are, what brought him to the DC universe, and just where we're all headed. I love it. I think I still maintain this is going to be Jeff Johns' magnum opus. I think this is going to he's really going to nail this. And
I
I hope
hope that's the case. I mean, you know that I've been kind of like waiting to bust out a good majority of the series, and ironically, I was ready to just go back and reread and catch up, and then I found out that the next issue of Doomsday Clock was delayed by another 3 weeks. I was like, oh, maybe not. But
yeah,
from what I've read, it was spectacular. It's so heavily layered, and he does a great job at really exemplifying what Alan Moore was doing with the original Watchmen, but also integrating, the tonalities and these really, really familiar, characterizations of the DC Comics pantheon. Um, from what I understand, though, from what people are telling me, that it really feels like he's they've been re-editing the script, because I heard that they mentioned like Sanctuary and Heroes in Crisis. And when Doomsday Clock was coming out, or when it first started, Sanctuary, like Heroes in Crisis, wasn't even an idea.
yeah,
He
no,
started writing this when Rebirth started.
yeah,
So it upsets me a little bit that, because of whatever circumstances caused them to start publishing bi-monthly, now whatever we were going to get, we're not going to get. And it
yeah,
almost makes me afraid that that's going to have bigger implications on what Jeff Johns can do at the end of this story, because it's now going to occur at a totally different time in the DC continuity.
yeah.
So
Yeah, there's no question that the success of Metal, I think success of Metal caught DC by surprise. I think they were very surprised, or it was even more successful than they had hoped. And I also think that the initial success of Tom King on Batman was surprising too, because he actually surpassed Snyder in terms of successive sales in excess of 100,000 issues, 100 issues sold per issue. So Tom King's ongoing success with Batman, I mean, and him being able to have 103 issues to tell his story. I mean, when you take Batman off the plate, off the table, in terms of a continuity story, how do how you reconcile? You know, I still think they're going to have a hard time. I just think continuity wise, DC sort of put themselves in a little bit of a corner, and what I at some point I want Jeff Johns to write his biography or whatever, and I want to know what the original plan was for Rebirth. I'd love to be a fly on the wall to know what they changed.
And I can pretty much guarantee that whatever that was going to be is better than what we're getting now, because uh as far as I'm concerned, the first like year and a half of DC Rebirth was steamrolling everything else that was coming out. And now, to be honest with you, like I'm becoming very, very disenfranchised, and I'm becoming a lot more willing to drop books, just because I think there's been a pretty dramatic decline in the quality of a lot of these books. I used to be, there used to be no exceptions for me slowing down on books, and now there are books that I used to love that I don't prioritize. I don't really feel the need to, when I get home from work, first thing I want to do is not to sit down and read some of those books anymore. There are some books that I still feel that way for, and right now Detective Comics is one of them.
Mhm.
But that's just an unfortunate ongoing of whatever the hell DC is doing right now. And I'm just really afraid that whatever that is going to impact Doomsday Clock for the worse, because I feel like whatever Jeff Johns had planned initially was going to be incredible, and I think that it would have bled over into the quality of the entirety of the DC universe, because as far as I understand, the ending of Doomsday Clock was going to have a massive impact on the future of the DC universe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll see. And I hope well, I don't know. I think it still has the potential for a great ending. We'll have to wait and see.
I hope it does, and you know what? I hope whatever it does impacts the DC universe and turns it back up and has everything firing on all cylinders, man. I really, really do. But one book I kind of briefly wanted to talk about that started this year is the Punisher by Matthew Rosenberg. It's a book that I never thought I was going to be interested in, and then it was before we did that stream with Professor Bill about some of our favorite Marvel books post Fresh Start.
Yeah,
And I was just kind of, you know, reading books to get into books and just to try new things. And man, I don't know if you're reading this, but I really enjoy this Punisher book. And it's another one of those titles that takes the ending of and takes the happenings of Secret Empire and we just get something good out of it.
yeah. I got it on Comixology, but I haven't read any of the issues yet because I really like the premise that Professor Bill described it about coming out of Secret Empire. You know, Frank Castle was so obsessed with wanting to serve Hydra Captain America, he revered him, and so it made sense that that betrayal like that. It makes sense that Frank Castle would want to go and kill Hydra Cap. It really does, and so I actually I didn't like the way Secret Empire ended. I wanted Hydra Cap to be killed. I thought that was a huge blunder. And but now hearing that maybe the death of Hydra Cap can come at the hands of Punisher, now I'm glad they didn't kill him. But
Yeah. Also,
uh,
the art by I think it's Simon Kudransky is really, really good. Like it feels like oh god, it feels like Sean Phillips mixed with like Mitch Gerrard's. You know what I mean? Like you get a
yeah,
little bit of that like that kind of comic booky pop art from Mitch Gerrard's, but it just feels gritty and visceral, like in Sean Phillips, you know, like crime noir type of stories.
yeah,
It's I mean, again, I'm like 2 issues behind on it, but from the get-go, I'm like, what's going on? And it just keeps me asking questions, but they're all the right questions. And I think it's just been a great surprise for 2018. And you know, I never thought I would say this, but I think overall, post Fresh Start, I think I started to enjoy the Marvel books that I was reading more than I was reading than the DC books I was reading. You know, I think DC had a great start to the year because they were still kind of running on the final coattails of DC Rebirth, and then I think some of the books just became very much, oh, we're gonna get superstar writer on book. They can do whatever they want. Editorial doesn't matter, you know. And we've talked about, or I've talked about with you at length, that how I think that the reason DC Rebirth was so good was because editorial had a handle on the continuity of what was going on in the universe. Because I know a lot of people are very much just like, I want great story. If you choose to tell a story, especially in a periodical literary form that you are acknowledging takes place in the same existence as these other stories, then it's your responsibility to make sure that there's some sort of semblance and there's some sort of interconnectivity between the two. You
yeah,
know, you don't even have to acknowledge it, but you should not be actively letting your creators contrast it or totally contradict it. So, and that's I think one of the places that DC kind of ran amok this year is that they started letting the superstar writers do things and were afraid to say no, and they tried too hard to make everything work, and sometimes it straight up didn't.
yeah. No, no, I agree. And Matthew Rosenberg is very hit and miss with me. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a fan of he wrote. I wasn't a fan of his multiple man series. I collected that. I gave him a chance on that. Didn't impress. I gave him a chance with the Return of Black Widow series. It was 5 issues. The Tales of Suspense. I was disappointed in that. So I was surprised to hear that he's doing such a good job on Punisher. So if it wasn't for Professor Bill and now yourself, I wouldn't have got it on Comixology. But we'll have. Uh, I'm looking forward to reading it. I hope he kills Hydra Cap.
Yeah, me too. Along with Secret Empire in and of itself. One thing too, I wanted to give an honorable mention. We got Batman Who Laughs, the first issue at the tail end of 2018, and you know, I've spoken and I did an episode of Comics Insider where I talked about this. I honestly think that this was like a return to form for Scott Snyder. You know, this book reminded me that he still knows how to write Batman. and that he's intentionally writing whatever the hell other Batman he's writing for Justice League just to agree with that tonality. But this book told me, yeah, the guy still knows how to write Gotham. He still knows Gotham. He still knows horror. And I really only had one somewhat minute problem with the issue, but generally speaking, I think that Snyder does an absolutely great job. The story is interesting, and the character feels like Batman to me. And it's the first time, unfortunately, that I've been able to say that about Scott Snyder writing Batman in a while.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I look forward to the origin of the Grim Knight. I believe that's coming out in issue 2.
Mhm.
It's just Batman is such a limitless, so much potential with Batman related spin-offs and characters, and it's a really good. I wasn't a big fan of the Batman Who Laughs when it came out, and I'm not generally a huge fan of the character per se, but it's just written well, and it's the old story of, I mean, hey, same thing, it's like same thing with Venom. If you I might not like the character, but that's just all the more impressive when a writer can come along and say, oh really, you don't think you like this character, read this, and it's
Right.
like, wow.
I think that the if this story ends well, I think that this book could go down in history as like one of the great miniseries. Because here's the thing with Scott Snyder, oftentimes the journey is spectacular. You know, he's best in his comic book works in the body of the work, but once you get to the tail end is where he starts to fall. And I'm really interested to see where he goes because, to be 100% honest with you, if it's our Bruce Wayne versus the Batman Who Laughs and the Grim Knight, I genuinely have no idea how he's going to win. You know what I mean? I genuinely have no easy instant solution for this. And if anybody's going to come up with a solution for me, it's going to be Scott Snyder. And so, I don't want to speak preemptively, but I think that as long as he can nail the ending, that this series is going to be absolutely incredible. I think that this is some of Jock's best work for the big two. I
Yeah,
think that it's a little bit more easily interpreted because there are, for example, witches. There were times where he was drawing the witch characters that I really, really, really had to like turn the lamp on, like look at it, figure out what I'm looking at, and at no point was that an issue here. But
yeah,
again, his style really complements just the character of Gotham. I think that it's safe to say that Gotham in and of itself is almost its own character. It goes through its rises, its falls, but at the end of the day, Gotham is always there. It's in
yeah.
these books, and it just has so many different um, attributes to it that make it interesting. And Jock does a great job at keeping that tonality consistent with what at least I believe to be Gotham.
I I agree, and just to sort of build on the backbone of one of the comments you made, if I I'm looking forward to, at the end, if there is going to be a Bruce Wayne versus Batman Who Laughs versus Grim Knight, how can he possibly win? That's one of the things that I'm so interested in, because uh, I it actually annoys me a little bit in a wonderfully cool fanboy way. It annoys me that people have this notion that, oh wow, Batman couldn't defeat himself if he didn't have without a moral code. I mean, Grim Knight must be unbeatable because he's Batman without a moral code. My response is, so what? To me, one of the reasons why bad guys lose is because I ascribe to the view that it's because they're evil. I don't care what anybody says. This, I just, to me, it's a challenge, that it's just another challenge for Batman to overcome. He's relentless. I don't
Mm.
care how much lacking of a moral code the Grim Knight is. Batman never gives up. Batman finds a way. That's what makes him a hero, and that's what I look the most forward to seeing. And I love that and I say that in an awesome way, because I'm like you. It's like, how the hell are you going to beat the Grim Knight? Because
Right,
Batman without a moral code sounds pretty freaking terrifying.
right.
But it's sort of like, what's the difference between change the character? What if it's like Superman battling battling Ultraman. I mean, it's been done before. It's like Batman battling Owlman, arguably Owlman in the Earth 3 version. He's that was even in the animated series. Batman's dealt with evil doppelgangers before, And but the Batman somehow that's why I'm impressed with Scott Snyder. Somehow he's these aren't particularly unique ideas, quite frankly. The idea of a bad Batman, it's not a unique idea by any stretch. And yet somehow this feels like a fresh take. That's what impresses me.
Well, and I love that, when Scott Snyder writes these horrifying stories, they're deeply personal, you know. I love that this story starts with Bruce finding, himself from an alternate reality where he was happy and he kind of resents it. You know what I mean? It's a world where he married Catwoman and he retired from being Batman and he could die a happy life. Um, and it's and they start the story off with his most positive memory, only for the proceedings of this issue to be deeply depressing and horrifying. And with the thing with Scott Snyder is everything that he's written, Batman wise, is deeply human. It is so deeply human, but it's wrapped up in these crazy, horrifying, psychological messes that just take time to unravel. And so it gets me excited because I see a lot of really interesting themes here about, just like it's hard to explain. Obviously, the big things, one of the things that are consistent throughout pretty much every Batman story ever is the impact of his parents' death and the loss of love there, and that truly there is something to be said about, the loss of both his mother and his father. And it's not to say that Alfred wasn't a spectacular role model for him, but no matter what, he lost his parents. It's not like Kal-El, who never got to know his parents. Bruce grew up with his parents, to a certain age and then lost them. They're still very much in his head. He has them.
Yeah.
So, and I think that that's one of the things that this is going to play with a lot is just that loss of paternal and maternal affection. And again, the story's absolutely thrilling. I don't know where we're going to be going from here, and it's a good writer handling Joker, which we don't always get. So I can certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, and I still think there's some misdirection going on there because you just know the Joker's not really dead.
Oh yeah. Oh,
And something's going on there.
there's no way the Joker's dead. I think my biggest problem with the issue, spoilers for those of you who haven't read it, I've reviewed it on my channel, is that how Alfred's just like open the doors, like let the Joker in, and Joker's just easily to pull out a gun. It's like, bro, he could have shot Alfred. How did you know he wasn't going to shoot Alfred? Why was there no countermeasure? You know what I mean? Why was there nothing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was just standing there. It's like, if he pulled out that gun and pointed it at Alfred, Alfred's done. That was the one thing that kind of grinded my gears about the issue. That was like my one problem. I was like, that seems a little bit too trusting.
Yeah, well, clearly Joker has an agenda. Uh, the Joker's brilliant enough that he could come up with a toxin that would be non-lethal and still change Batman into our version of a Batman who laughs. The Joker's brilliant. The Joker's very intelligent, and so the Joker I think, could make an alternate toxin. And I think that's what he did. I think this is all misdirection. And I think Joker's working behind the scenes, and at the end, it's going to be the Joker that takes out the Batman who laughs, and it'll be Batman versus the Grim Knight. That's my prediction, but maybe that's too obvious. So I
No,
don't know.
I think I agree in the fact that I think the Joker is going to play a big role, and I think he's a bigger role than they're kind of slating him to. Um, I'm really interested in what this does for Batman moving forward, how this is going to develop him. Because again, Scott Snyder, when he writes Batman, it's Batman dealing with these very plausible fears that any of us could have, and watching someone who like Batman who is emotionally scarred because of his backstory, but also because of what he does on a nightly basis. Watching someone like that deal with things that are kind of brought to us in this very fictional, very elevated, very exaggerated way, but to the core of it, they're emotionally dealing with things that we deal with. And I think that that's going to be a really fun thing to watch, or not a fun thing, but it's going to be a really interesting read to see how Batman handles that. And I think that if the end of Scott Snyder's All-Star Batman is any indicator, I think Alfred is also going to play a big role in this book, or at least a fairly solid supporting role in the book. So it was
I
good.
yeah. I, yeah, it's a great time to be a Batman fan because of Detective Comics and the Batman Who Laughs, and I wish I could say the same for Batman.
Oh, me too.
The current arc is just awful in Tom King, but we're not talking about that. I want to quickly talk about another one that I think would certainly deserve honorable mention for this past year, and that is Hawkman.
Oh, I 100% agree with that.
You know, Hawkman, fantastic art. Not a particularly complex storyline by any stretch, but one that was beautifully simple. And usually, simple storylines are not associated with Hawkman.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what was so nice about it. It went against expectations. I was expecting, if you were to ask me what my expectation was of a Hawkman, you know, first 7 issues, I would have said it would have been bloated, complex, difficult to understand, convoluted. But yet it was the total opposite. It was easy to follow. It was basically, you know, very straightforward. Born at different planets and different times, sort of a mysteries evolving over generations, being born on different planets, exciting sci-fi, different settings, and all fantastically drawn. Consistency of art, consistency of story. It's not done yet. A really great, sort of an interesting, unique take on sort of combining all the different elements into a new, vibrant Hawkman origin, which I quite liked. I really enjoyed issue 7,
I
almost
agree.
imbuing it with a mythological element, almost a religious element that, you know, sort of making you sort of reevaluate the importance of Hawkman beyond just being lovers being reincarnated. It actually, there's some complexity there that I'm interested in Hawkman more than I have been in the past. And I have to say, I enjoy it more. I like the origin more in issue 7. I enjoy it more than what Jeff Johns did when Jeff Johns redid it. And I like Jeff Johns' revision as well back in the day. I think that was flowing out of the pages of JSA back in 2005, 6. But in any event, impressive.
No, I agree. And I love that not only is he building upon Hawkman, but he's helping to solidify and shed light on what's happened previous. You know, coattailing off of what you had said, Hawkman's history is not easy to understand, and it's not like they wrap things up in a little bow for us to understand. He's deeply complex, and I think he's a character that a lot of writers just don't understand. And for me, I feel like Venditti does a great job at taking the more beloved reincarnations of the character, letting us know that they existed and giving us a plausible explanation to how both they can exist and what we're reading now can exist. And you know, for me, you know, Grant Morrison talks about giving a character a birth and a death. I truly think that Venditti is giving Hawkman a birth. I think that this is the new birth of Hawkman. We are getting a solid way to kind of congeal everything that's happened previous. I loved, you know, that issue when he was in the microverse and they were explaining how all these different Hawkmans or all these different versions of him are existing throughout space and time. And it gives a level of plausibility, A, to the story, which is required of him as the writer, but B, to the long history of Hawkman that's come before it. And to be honest, I think that uh, he's building upon Carter Hall as a character, but because before this, he was kind of just like a savage, angry, instinctual man. And now we're getting him as the explorer. You know, it would make sense that someone reincarnated throughout time would be interested in history and the anthropology that goes into studying humanity and what, you know, whatever other races of people came before. It just,
Yeah, I would add to that one of the things that Hawkman's always been that I thought was too overblown and what turned me away from the character most of the time was that he was just portrayed, I always felt, as being not as intelligent as he ought to be portrayed.
right.
The idea, especially in the new 52 incarnation, this savage Hawkman, I just thought, you know, it was just overblown. In fact, they even had Rob Liefeld actually wrote and drew the Savage Hawkman in the New 52. That's how I was going to say that's how badly savage they made him. I say that with apologies to Rob Liefeld. I mean, I you know, he had a very particular take on the character, and I respect it. I wasn't a big fan of it. Um, but the idea that he's actually very intelligent and he should have wisdom, and I
Mhm.
love the mythological element. There's almost like a Phantom Stranger element, like one of the origins of Phantom Stranger, which I don't know if is in continuity anymore, but one of the origins of Phantom Stranger was that he was one of the guards that put Jesus to death, and he was punished by having to wander the earth as the Phantom Stranger for centuries because he was the one that put Christ to death, or one of the soldiers, and very religious Judeo-Christian sort of mythology there. And the fact that Hawkman here, the fact that he's got to save as many lives as he took in all his past lives before he is allowed to die and achieve some kind of redemption. It's the you know there's something very simplistic about that, but yet very mythological, and there's a beauty to that, and it gives him a goal to work toward,
Hmm.
and it gives him something to fight for. And quite frankly, yeah, I like it. I'm really curious to know how Kendra Hall and Shiera Hall play into the mythology,
Mhm.
because they had the redhead there in the seventh issue. I'm not sure who that was. Maybe that was Shiera, but there's still a lot of questions I have, but I'm asking the right kinds of questions. I like the
Exactly.
questions that he's planting in my head. I'm not confused.
Mhm.
I'm not asking questions like when at the end of a Tom King Batman, the questions I'm asking is usually, why is this so stupid? Why is it why you know what I mean? The questions I ask are not good questions. They're like,
Right.
what the hell's going on? Why should I care? You know, with Hawkman, it's like, this is cool. I can't wait to see what happens here. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? And I say it in excitement.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And the beautiful thing too is I'm enjoying the ride. It's this entire series so far has been such an adventure. And as much as I can herald, how great of a character exploration this has been for Carter Hall Hawkman, it's just been a fun story to read. Every single issue, you know what I mean? We're getting these great adventures, and we get to see Hawkman go to these different places in these different times, throughout the universe. It's a fun ride, and again, Venditti's really really capturing what I feel to be a sensual essence of the character. And like you had mentioned earlier, Brian Hitch is doing some of the best art of his career on this book. It's really solid. It's highly detailed, and everything's rendered well. The illustrations are fun, and honestly, like every single issue where we just get to follow Hawkman doing something different and going somewhere different, I feel this level of childish excitement, when he's fighting the Featherins, all those bird people, or
Yeah.
when he goes to Krypton to fight Katar Hall, or even that, again, that origin story where it just feels like there's something heavy in Hawkman's past that's weighing him down, and then we finally learn what it is, and it truly his crusade as Hawkman is his penance, for being one of the death bringers. And it just provides these new layers to the character that I don't think anybody has ever done, not even Jeff Johns. So I agree. I'm really, really glad you brought this book up because I think it's excellent. And I think if anybody's watching this that doesn't know anything about Hawkman, it's okay. You can start from the beginning
Yeah.
and you will
Yeah.
be fine.
Very accessible. And again, that criteria I mentioned from the beginning: the writing, art, accessibility, consistency, self-contained stories, unique, and it gets good buzz too. It should be getting more buzz, but overall, it's the total package.
Yeah, one thing I feel like is noteworthy enough to bring up is this year we actually got the first book in DC's Black Label line, and that's Batman Damned. Issue one was obviously highly controversial, and I don't think that we really need to get into that because I think we both probably beaten that to death just like everyone else on the internet.
Yeah.
But we got issue two, and I think that in terms of the quality of the storytelling in issue two, or I guess the direction that Brian Azzarello chose to take it, um, was different, and it wasn't what people were expecting. And he's done these he's taken very very big creative what's the word I'm looking for?
Risks,
Risks, I guess. Um,
creative liberties.
yeah, liberties. That's it. That's it. He's taken a lot of really, really big creative liberties in the directions and in the direction of the story and the interpretations of these different characters. I don't know if you read issue 2,
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
and obviously the end of that is pretty intense. To be 100% honest with you, I mean, I can get why people don't like it, but I don't think that it's poor writing. I just think that it's a very different direction. And the beautiful thing is, unlike other writers who are writing characters in continuity and making these I guess these farly unrepresentative interpretations of characters, this is Brian Azzarello's universe. He can kind of do what he wants, and what he's doing here is just really making a horrifying, psychologically, complex landscape for Batman to be playing in, and he's kind of interplaying this level of mysticism in Batman's upbringing and his origin, and it honestly, like, I still find it interesting. I think that, like, the interpretations are fresh, they're new. They might not be my favorite interpretations all the time, but I appreciate that we're doing something different and we're really stirring the pot with this one.
Yeah, I agree. I don't. It doesn't blow me away or anything. It's not like it didn't make my list or anything like that.
Mhm.
But I the thing is, I always Brian Azzarello, I always respect as a writer because I always know that I'm gonna get a different take, and I'm in for the long haul with Batman Damned. It's the art first and foremost is absolutely fantastic. Brian Azzarello has just he can have a really twisted way of looking at things. I mean, he's written some. Well, I don't want to talk some of his other work, but I love his. I still love what he did with Wonder Woman in the New 52. I mean, he had balls of steel, making her the goddess of war. I mean, he's not afraid to rock the boat, and
Right.
he's doing that with Batman Damned. And I mean, I wish I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall if when he debated whether or not to show the Batawang from that first issue there. I mean, that's got to piss him off, the controversy that caused, because that's just insane. And uh, obviously, he's probably having some issues or arguments with editorial over the series, because I'm sure that probably wasn't the first
Well,
argument that they had on that series. And
well, well, there's a rumor that after issue 1, like, the part of the reason as to why there were massive delays was because they made him re-edit the script. And from what I understand, that with the boundaries that they gave him, the reason that some people have an issue with how extreme book 2 was because he's, like, intentionally trying to push to the limits of what DC was giving them after making him, like, re-edit the first
mhm,
book. And to be quite frank, the fact that they're not republishing the first book
mhm,
makes him and Libermejo lose money because they get a certain profit margin on sales. And
yeah,
to be quite frank with you, if that book got a second print, it would have sold like gangbusters. I mean, with the first printing and nothing alone, that month it sold out immediately.
yeah.
So if this book were, I guarantee you that if they had, even if they had edited out the Batwing but continued to reprint the book, it probably would have been on its fourth printing by now.
I have. I don't know why they didn't reprint it. Maybe they never gave it a second printing because of the format was different, and they had already. I don't know. They it was just too. They didn't feel they could get the money back, but they could have. It would have sold like hotcakes. But yeah, I don't know. But I will say this though. You know, I think DC forgot the lesson of the Killing Joke. I mean, the Killing Joke was out of continuity. It was never intended to be in continuity to begin with when Alan Moore wrote the Killing Joke, and that was off the beaten path, and it was controversial, and this was something that was essentially a de facto sequel to the Killing Joke. So why not let Azzarello do whatever the heck he wanted? I mean, push the envelope a little bit. I'm so disappointed with DC and to give in like that, and to be concerned about the image and just the outline of male genitalia in an issue, which, I did not notice until it was brought to my attention. I mean, and I guess that's me. I mean, maybe I read too many comics. I take certain liberties. I don't. I didn't even. I read. I read first too fast. I read it too fast the first time or something. I loved it. It was great. I didn't know there was a. I didn't know there was a Batwang in it.
Yeah.
and but that just goes to show you, another person's. I missed something that apparently offended. I mean, these people that were offended, did they actually buy the comic, or did they? Did
It,
they?
and you know what the worst part is, man? Nobody ever complains when you see a nude woman in a comic books, but you see the shadow of Batman's genitalia, and it's the next big problem. And again, like you were saying, I'm deeply disappointed in Black Label, and it makes me lose a little bit of faith because one of the things they were selling, these were adult stories, these were mature stories. If any self-respecting adult has a problem seeing the shadow of a penis, you got another thing coming. I don't know. I don't think that should have been an issue. But Koala One in the chat says, as long as no one turns Etrigan the Demon into a rapper in the main universe, I guess we're fine. I agree. And again, I think that there are a lot of things about the fact that this is Azzarello's universe that you can appreciate the creative freedoms that he's been given, and the liberties that he's taking. You know, I kind of like it. I don't want this in my main universe Etrigan, but if you're gonna incorporate Etrigan in this type of universe where you're kind of displaying Gotham as this, this incredibly socially relevant, crime-ridden city, who's to say that a modern Jason Blood in 2018 wouldn't be a rapper instead of a poet? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's a little bit odd. Yes, it's different, but I don't feel like it's out of place in the slightest. I actually thought it was a fun reimagination. Um, and I quite frankly, I like the characterizations, and I think that even with the ending of the book that, I don't want to spoil and I don't want to get too deep into, because I think the ending of the book can be interpreted in two different ways. Just because, again, I assume that because of the Black Label or the editorial confines, they probably had to cut something out and or change it. But you know what? In the universe that we're trying to play at, I think that this Batman is an absolute psychopath, and it's not like he's tricking me. You know what I mean? It's not like this is my main universe Batman. This is Azzarello's Batman, and it feels like emotionally. And again, from what we've seen in Noel and in Joker and in Luthor in their universe, the Azzarello and Bermejo verse, it's
Yeah.
it's psychologically relevant. We're not going to ignore the fact that this character is dealing with these intense pressures and these absolutely zany, wonky, and psychopathic people on a nightly basis, and we're going to act like he walks out of it totally okay. Please. Like, I don't know. I think it's an enjoyable book, and like you were saying, the art is certainly to be lauded over. It's absolutely beautiful, and yeah, I think it's a solid book. But in the chat, Koala One says, speaking of Black Label, where are the rest of the books? The solicits for the next few months are out, and it's been a full year since this was announced already. Where are they?
That's a good point. We know that they retroactively called Batman White Knight a Black Label book, because they put that in a trade format. They put the Black Label on Sean Gordon Murphy's alternate Batman take.
Mm-hmm.
The other they're supposed to be coming out this year. The other one is I believe, isn't Scott Snyder writing a Batman take where
Yeah.
Batman's in the desert and he's got Joker's head in a jar or something?
Yeah, The Last Night, I think, is supposed to come out in March. From what I understand, it hasn't been fully solicited. Here's the thing. I am almost entirely sure that that whatever delay that we're seeing in the Black Label is relevant to their reaction that we saw after the first issue of Batman Damned. I think that the editorial is going through all the scripts, making sure things are good. If things need to be redrawn, they need to be redrawn. I think, especially the books that I think were supposed to be slated earlier after the inception of Black Label, Batman Damned had that huge delay because of what happened in issue 1. I full-heartedly think we were supposed to get the and obviously, like, if that was on pace, we would have ended up getting the final issue of that and the last night around the same time. And then that would have bled into, I don't think Three Jokers is Black Label, but we would have gotten three. Oh, I think it is. No, Three Jokers, I'm pretty sure is Black Label. We would
Is
have
it really?
I'm
I
pretty
didn't know
sure
that.
it's in continuity, but it's Black Label.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah, but yeah, and so we get Three Jokers. I don't think that Deconic Wonder Woman story was even slated to be told early in the Black Label publishing line. I think that was meant to be, mid to late or late 2019. And same with that history, the DC Universe that I forget who's writing it. But I don't think that was meant to be an early thing. And Frank Miller's Frank Miller. We're probably not going to see Superman, Superman Year 1 until the end of 2019. We probably won't see issue 2 until the middle of 2020. So that's just Frank Miller. I feel like that question, Koala, is something that could warrant its own conversation almost, because there are a number of different things that could have affected what's going on. Namely, though, I think it is their reaction to the first book of Batman Damned is highly indicative of what's going on here with all these delays.
Yeah, I think that the publicity sort of rubbed them the wrong way, and it wasn't quite maybe the tone that they're looking for. I think they want a more adult take, but maybe less overtly, I guess, sexual, but maybe just more darker and adult, as opposed to maybe the type of maybe childlike bad publicity that penis gave. I mean, I just, it's all nonsense. The whole thing is nonsense to me. It was just, to me, it's absolutely bloatedness, but whatever. That's
I agree with you 100%. And it's a shame that, again, DC is just being so freaking reactive. And
I should say that's one of their most, that's one of the on many top of the most disappointing events of one of the most disappointed actions by a publisher in 2018. DC's, that was one of them for DC. Next to The Wedding, Batman, or DC's reaction to not giving a second printing to Batman Damned, I think would rank up there too.
100%.
Number one would obviously be their blunder on the Wedding issue for Batman.
Yeah, I honestly think DC Publishing has made some really huge mistakes. We brought something up earlier in how, there is something that we don't know the definite on, that's affecting the publishing schedule of Doomsday Clock, and I think is resulting again in Jeff Johns having to edit some parts of his story to conform to the publishing line, which I hope doesn't impact the quality of Doomsday Clock. I mean, we'll never know, what was originally intended versus what we're going to be getting. And again, obviously Black Label and The Wedding. I think DC's made 3 really big mistakes. And I think the biggest shame about that was that post Rebirth, they had, the momentum was entirely in their favor.
Yeah.
It's just, DC, I just don't, I just don't understand like what they're doing right now. And I hope that things turn around. I really, really do. And I hope that Jeff Johns kind of taking a far more creative role in the company will allow for more collaboration with Jeff Johns and these creators. And I hope that, I really sincerely hope that his loss of the executive position will give him, and I hope that his loss of the executive position with DC will not change his level of authority that he has in the creative direction for the DC universe. I really do. So one thing I did briefly want to mention that I know a lot of people are not talking about is American Carnage. It's a Vertigo series by Brian Hill. And I think this book is absolutely spectacular. I think, I don't want to talk about it too long because I did a review of it recently. The second issue came out at the end of 2018. And it is this incredibly topical story about, the downfalls of the American machine. There's so much to our society, and there were a lot of ideals for America to live up to, especially being like the world's biggest superpower from the mid 20th century moving on. And it just talks about the social, economic, political, and psychological problems that our society continues to perpetuate, and how there are all of these really, really plausible complaints and these really plausible cons that are being generated from both sides of the political spectrum. Nobody is being thrown under the bus particularly, and it's finding this level of understanding that everybody can make a difference in some way, just by acknowledging the fact that there is no 100% right way to operate, especially in a society where, everybody has the freedom to have their own voice, and where everybody is or should theoretically have their own mind. They should have their own opinions. And
I have the first two issues, but I haven't read them yet.
they're
I haven't.
excellent. They are truly, truly excellent, and I will 100% admit, I think this is the best thing that Brian Hill's ever written so far. I think it's so complex, it's so incredibly layered. The dialogue here is spectacular. I think that it's evocative. It feels like he's creating these characters that feel entirely of their own, merit. It's really well done. The artist Leandro Fernandez kind of takes little hints of Eduardo Riso, who was Brian Azzarello's artist on 100 Bullets. So we get a little bit of this cool like spy noir tonality to it, but also we're dealing with a lot of the just the injustice that comes along with our society, and I think American Carnage is the perfect answer to, or is at least a perfect calling to what's going on in America and the problems that we face, both in government and in the social sphere, and in every social sphere. It deals with, the lower class, the middle class, the upper class, the sociological forces that kind of force people into making terrible decisions, both from the white collar, the blue collar, and from the working class. I really enjoy the story. It's complex. The characters feel so real and you know, compelling. It's a great book. You guys should definitely be picking this up.
Yeah. It
Art
reminds
solid.
the art reminds me of Edward Rizzo on 100
Yeah,
Bullets.
yeah. I was mentioning that when you stepped away, that it's very evocative of Eduardo Rizzo. And just to let you guys know that are watching this now, go check out my Comics Insider, the second episode, because there is a chance to win the first issue of American Carnage digitally, along with Shazam #1. So make sure you guys go check that out if you want to win a copy of both of those books. Free comics are free comics, and let me know what you guys think of it. I'm more than happy to support a book like American Carnage. And again, being someone who, I would definitely say that I'd be of the more moderate conservative perspective, and it makes me rethink my own politics, and how I think about the world, and the various stratifying forces that run through our society and our government, and the big machine that is America. It's a great book so far, and I'm really enjoying where the story's going as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll have to read it. That's a glowing recommendation because I did pick it up. I'm getting all the Vertigo series, and I
mhm.
even read Border Town, and I didn't even mind Border Town despite the controversy. And I think Vertigo is, although it hasn't got a great deal of hype, I think Vertigo is on a little bit of a comeback. I know I'm in the minority when I say this. I'm enjoying Goddess. The first issue of Goddess Mode wasn't near as bad as I thought some people were saying it was, but yeah, American Carnage. It looks like something I'd really enjoy. That's why I got it because the covers alone just look spectacular.
Oh,
It
it's
looks.
absolutely incredible. And you know what? One great thing about it is it's acknowledging the fact that the various forms of prejudice throughout the world are just becoming more efficient. You know what I mean? They're not going away. They're just finding a way to shroud themselves in the ongoings of our society, and all of the different topical
Yeah,
events that go on throughout the world. It deals with police brutality, racial discrimination, um, trauma, from both, war veterans who aren't being taken care of, and for those that are forced to kind of fend for themselves on the street. And it's really good, and I love that it doesn't particularly point fingers, and it just says we all kind of fucked up. Everybody from every walk of life has inevitably and or will inevitably fuck up. And that's what's perpetuating this massive cycle. And it's just talking about how much smarter these stratifying forces are becoming. You know, it's a great book.
It's interesting that Brian Edward Hill is writing something like that, because in this political comic culture climate, writing any sort of story that is remotely touching on a political issue in any way, you're sort of courting potential fallout from certain there's a significant contingent of comic book YouTubers that take offense to any sort of politics in comic books, and to the point where I think it it I think it scares away some writers to address some topics because they don't want to go there. And let me ask you this: I haven't read it yet, but do you think what are the politics? Is it heavy-handed? Does it feel forced,
No,
or does it feel it's a good
no,
balance? Or
and to be honest with you, man, I don't want to get too far into politics, but I grew up in a town where I was the minority, you know, and so I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of the directionality of where we're going here because I've seen, I grew up in a town where I was the minority and where there was there was a big stratification of wealth, and but when I got older, like now I live near my a state university, one of which is held to fairly high acclaim, and I live near my state's capital, so I've seen what the wealth can do to people, and in all of the different social strata that make themselves very apparent. I think it's really just Brian making these observations that sometimes people aren't willing to mention. For example, um, in the first issue, we deal with all of these. Obviously, like police brutality is a very hot button issue right now, and he deals with this by saying, "Yeah, there are a lot of things that go on in the world that are tragic and that are ultimately a result of racial prejudice. But you know what? Not all of it is. You can't, and it's just basically about not branding all of these things just because you can. It's important to sit down and observe these things and realize that there's so much more to society. It's such a complex machine, and that those things happen. And sometimes it is strictly prejudice. Sometimes it's fear of survival, upon a number of other things. And again, it's dealing with the fact that those in power who look to discriminate towards any particular group of people, are becoming smarter, and they're doing it in ways that are far less overt, and that the more overt forms of prejudice are kind of, they're the ones dying, and it gives society this image that these problems are being fixed, although they're not. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like these things are able to work far more efficiently. And so I really enjoy the book. And again, that's coming from a pretty moderate conservative. So I would definitely recommend that you guys check this out. Again, if you guys want a free copy, make sure to go check out the my second episode of Comics Insider, and you will also get a chance to win a free copy of Shazam #1. So I did want to Jesus, man, my English is not doing so hot right now. I just wanted to read the comment here. Ant Duhar, he hopes that Johns doesn't lose his touch because his Shazam started off solid, but he's concerned about Doomsday Clock. He hopes it concludes in a way that makes sense. I don't think that there's a world where John writes something that doesn't make sense. It's whether or not it finishes with the same level of luster that it started with and that it was leading towards. You
yeah,
know,
no, I agree. I'm confident that Jeff Johns he'll hit the landing on Doomsday Clock. I think I'm looking forward to it. And worst case scenario, even if he doesn't, I haven't Doomsday Clock. The first issue of Doomsday Clock, and I think it's issues three and four. There's some brilliance in Doomsday Clock,
oh yeah,
philosophical questions, the layout of the panel. I mean, there's some absolute brilliance to Doomsday Clock in terms of how philosophically the themes that it deals with. that I'm not going to sit here and another buddy of mine, Spike Valentine, he's a huge Watchmen fan. Um, I won't say it's necessarily as brilliant as Watchmen, but there's some brilliance in Doomsday Clock, and I think it's going to be. I can't wait to get the whole hardcover and get it as a trade. It's going to be good.
And you know what I love about Doomsday Clock, or at least from what I had read up to, is that it just felt organic. You know, the integration of the Watchmen universe and the DC universe together, it doesn't feel like a big publicity stunt. It just feels like a story that Jeff Johns had in his head. And he's like, you know what? These two things are owned by the same, mother company.
Yeah.
Everybody, and they both have their respective fan bases, some of which interlap with each other. And I have this story that can make sense of them interacting with one another. Why not?
Yeah.
And the art's beautiful. Gary Frank knocks it out of the park. Koala One, have you guys talked about Justice League Odyssey? I feel like I like it more than most people. I've only read the first 2 issues, and to be quite honest with you, it feels sloppy. I feel like it's just it it's indicative of what's going on in the main Justice League title, where it just seems like we're swinging for the fences and we're doing things because they're cool and not because they necessarily make sense.
Yeah.
I feel like some of the interpretations of characters just feels off and unnecessary. I know one of the things, Boom, that you and I had talked about is how in the hell does our Cyborg and Starfire so close when Cyborg was never a Titan?
Yeah.
It's just being consistent. And to be quite honest with you, I don't love what Cedric's doing on art. I think that this is some of his lower quality artwork that I've seen from him since he came to DC.
I would his art's I think his art's good. I think it was more stunning when he was doing it for Aquaman.
Oh, agreed.
But I will say this about Justice League Odyssey was a comic book where they fundamentally, I think they had to change direction because they delayed it. It was actually delayed many months.
Yeah, and they made Cedric redraw. I guess he had already drawn like 4 issues, and they made him go back and redraw it. So I don't 100% blame Cedric, because I'm sure that the timeline to which he had to complete those first 2 issues were far more rushed.
This goes into our earlier discussion about there's been some serious, significant editorial direction on the overall or overarching narrative of the entire DC universe and all the titles in general. And I think Justice League Odyssey suffered because of that. But just to address Koala's comments, when she suggests she might be a little bit of an outlier because she likes Justice League Odyssey, after reading Justice League Odyssey #1, at that time, I thought it was really good, and I really thought it had a lot of potential. But what disappoints me, I still think it has potential, but what disappoints me with it, despite its potential, is how I think they've really downplayed and relegated Darkseid to being.
Yeah,
he just doesn't feel epic enough. This is Darkseid, and he shouldn't be messing around dealing with. I don't like the premise. I mean, Cyborg is a god, Starfire is a god, Azrael is a god. This is a very eclectic, generally uninteresting group together so far. They finally started to click now with issue 3. Or is issue 4 than they have. So I've noticed an improvement, but this has to feel more epic, and it just doesn't feel epic enough because Darkseid is in it. It's a decent enough story. It's okay, and all this, by the way, is clearly playing a role. According to Scott Snyder, it's related to Justice League Dark. It's building something, Justice League proper, et cetera, et cetera. All the fallout from the Source Wall, all this stuff's going to come to a head. But I still believe that we need Darkseid to step up to the plate. He needs to kick some ass here and he's Thanos level. He shouldn't be concerning himself with B-list characters.
yeah.
And I say that with great respect to Starfire and Cyborg and Azrael, but I'm sorry, man, but he shouldn't be in this title. I was more excited about this title when I mistakenly thought Wonder Woman was going to be in Justice League Odyssey. And because I thought that would have been epic.
I don't mind the eclecticism of the group. We're not getting any expository information as to the why or how. It's like, it's just because. It's all just because. I'm never really one, you know, there are some genres of comic books or of literature in general or storytelling that I can just kind of accept it just because, and it's really only when it comes to magic, you know, because there isn't like solid, you know, I don't think that there are words in the dictionary to really explain the things that go on in magic, and they're typically far more imaginative. Whereas like space stories tend to have some level of science fiction behind them, and before the word fiction, there is science. So you can add something that can at least feel factual. Um, and again, like you were saying, like the cast of characters is like, why? What about these characters makes them the right one for the book? You know, what makes this group the right book? And I'll say too, like what you were talking about, how the book just lacks any sense of an epic. And it goes right back to the title. The word Odyssey. The Odyssey was one of the greatest tales in all of human literature.
Yeah.
It's one of the first great adventure stories. And what are we getting? What are we getting? Some really quirky character interactions in a flaming brainiac spaceship?
Yeah.
Cool. Your aesthetic's fun, but what are you doing beyond that? That's
Well,
what
not only that, and this was something that might drive you insane if you read the latest issue. Azrael is really written out of character. Like if you're not familiar with Azrael, it won't. You know, you're not going to know the difference, and it's not going to bother you. But Azrael is a religious character. I
right.
mean, he's somebody who believes in a god. He's part of the. He's an agent of Saint Dumas, and but here he actually wants to be a god. He can't believe that Cyborg doesn't want to be a god, and
I don't think that he would.
that's so against Azrael would never. That's sacrilegious to him.
Yeah, he wouldn't allow himself. His complex would not allow him to do that. In fact, you would think that he would resent the idea.
Exactly, but he's portrayed as someone who like a smartass. He's a little bit narcissistic. He's kind of a jerk, and you know he can't wait. You know, cool. When do I get to be a god? That was his attitude, and it's Williamson really doesn't have a clue. I don't think he's ever read anything about Azrael the character.
No.
Nothing. Like
And
and like he's writing all over the place, and frankly, even Starfire and Cyborg feels really forced how they're sort of almost they have this friendship which frankly didn't exist in the Rebirth universe, and even it didn't even exist in the in the New 52. So where it's coming from, I think there's some continuity things there, but I guess but frankly that's nitpicking. If the story it still has potential. It still has potential.
to
And I'm in it for the long haul, but I'm just saying that there's some nitpicks here that
to
I
be
can
quite honest with you, Boom, I don't think that it's nitpicky at all. I think those are very, very plausible issues to have with the story because for example, you're not nitpicking, you know, at like something small that a character did. You're nitpicking at fundamentals of writing. You know what I mean? You're not writing these characters consistent to their anything that's really existed beforehand. And again, you know, I think that it's a huge responsibility when you choose to write something in continuity to make sure that you're maintaining some semblance of the character that existed before you penned them. You know what
uh,
I mean?
I know what you mean, but I want to defend Koala for a second. I know she's just made a comment that if because this is why one of my tests is accessibility. So if somebody doesn't know, if you started reading Justice League Odyssey, having no familiarity with Cyborg, Azrael, Jessica Cruz, uh, I'm missing one, but I think the story would be bet. I think the story is actually hindered a little bit for those of us that have some knowledge of continuity, and I'm always mindful of that because I think to a new reader, the more unfamiliar you are with these characters, I think this story might read that much better because I think it's my familiarity with the characters that actually detracts for the story from me.
But also you have to take into consideration that that is a flaw on behalf of the writer because when you choose to do something in continuity, you know you're playing with something that already exists and that's already interacted with the universe. So
Fair comment.
when you choose not to be consistent with that at all, you know, it's ultimately lazy writing on the behalf of the writer. And yes, it makes it accessible to a new reader, but you know what? if I don't want to make I put words in Koala's mouth because I don't know if he or she is a longstanding comic book fan or not. But if you are a new comic book fan, it's going to mislead you into reading something into these characters that they're not. You know what I mean? If you're writing a character that's totally not Asriel, and then you go, to read like the old Chuck Dixon Asriel stuff or Nightfall, it's not going to be the same character. Or even if you're going to read Tynan's Detective Run, where Asriel played a decent part, you're not going to be reading the same character. So ultimately, yeah, it makes it accessible, but at the same time, you're not writing the character that exists. And if you're not going to write Asriel, then don't use Asriel. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, like it makes it accessible, but you're misleading the new readers. So in that sense, I think that it makes it less accessible to new readers because you're not bringing them into those characters that exist. You're bringing them into these characters that have the same name. They may look the same, but fundamentally are not the same. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
But again, I don't want to, I don't want to grill Koala. You like what you like, and I can totally respect that. And anybody will tell you that's watching this, or even Boom will tell you, I'm a nitpicky SOB. I really like. I can probably be far too critical at times, but I don't want that to affect how you're picking up the book and how you're enjoying the book. So again, please don't let what I had to say, defer you or deter you from enjoying it. And Antuhar says Justice League Odyssey could have had an epic narrative on the level of Warren Ellis's classic Planetary. If they played with that angle, it would make the book interesting. Yeah, I mean the idea of it is entirely interesting because out of what has it been almost 60 years that we've had some iteration of the Justice League around, and in none of those years have have we ever gotten a book entirely devoted to a space Justice League? I think if you played around with the cast and you put a different writer on it, sure, it could be an excellent book. And to be quite honest with you, the only reason I'm sticking on it right now is because Dan Abnett's going to be taking over. And I think Dan Abnett does a pretty solid job when it comes to ensemble A and B space stories. So that makes me more excited for it, and that's the only reason, honestly, I'm going to be picking up the story for the next couple months.
Yeah, we shall see. DC doesn't really have a great galactic cast. It doesn't have really. It doesn't. DC doesn't really have a Guardians of the Galaxy. They got a bunch of contenders, over the years. But they're all generally largely forgettable. They have Omega Men, but that's never seems to go anywhere. And yeah, but we'll have to wait and see.
And in my humble opinion, I think that it would have been a really smart idea to include a Green Lantern other than Jessica Cruz. I would have much rather have seen Kyle Rayner or Guy Gardner. Either one of the two, I would have preferred tenfold over Jessica Cruz because, to be quite blatant with you, I think Sam Humphries did an excellent job at the beginning of the Green Lanterns series, trying to give Jessica a foothold, but I don't think that she's strong enough to be a really contending player on her own team. In my opinion, it felt like from the Green Lantern series that we had a much more solid grasp on who Simon Baz was, and he felt like a much more sturdy and rigid character in his own right. Um, I don't think that Jessica Cruz is ready to go out on her own as a Green Lantern and do something like that and be, a leading role in a book. It
Yeah.
just it doesn't jive well with me, and I know that there are certainly fans of Jessica Cruz out there, and I think that what I had read in Green Lanterns was solid, but I don't think she's ready for this type of hype. And Koala says, okay, according to March solicits, Dan Abnett will be taking over Justice League Odyssey with number 6 in March. Cool. Hopefully it gives Williamson time to wrap up his story. If not, to be quite honest with you, I'm entirely confident in Dan Abnett's ability to pick up on whatever Williamson started and to, quite frankly, make it better. So,
Yeah. Well, we shall see.
because and one comment I do want to make is it seems like this generation of comic book writers um, are writing characters for stories and not writing stories for these characters. We've talked about this a couple times, but DC is a lot like this current like group of superstar writers. DC is just letting them make those type of executive decisions. Bendis, in my opinion, is not writing a really a really true speaking Superman story. I think his supporting cast is entirely wrong. I know that Boom, you and I both agree that Tom King's Batman is not Batman. It doesn't feel authentic to the character, and it doesn't even feel like a plausible interpretation. Williamson is doing what he's doing in Odyssey. I think Scott Snyder, some of the things that he's doing in Justice League feel very forced, just to say that he did it. Um, and I think that's entirely unfortunate. I think we need guys like Dan Abnett and Peter Tomasi and Rob Venditti who are going to pay their respect to what went with that to what came before it, but also not be afraid to build on top of it. But what you're building on top of it also has to feel somewhat plausible and in a somewhat similar direction to where these characters were going previously. And this isn't me saying that I want everything to be cookie cutter the same that it was since 1938 when Superman was first introduced in Action Comics #1. I'm not saying that at all, but there needs to be some level of consistency and plausibility when you're writing something that's in a continuity. I get it. We're gonna get a reboot probably within the next 5 years. Cool. But you know what? Until then, if you're gonna tell me that something is in the same timeline, in the same continuity, that Batman and Superman at these two separate points in time can interact with one each other, you know, that's on you. That's on the publisher. So I really hope that DC again kind of lets their editorial take on a little bit more of an authoritarian role in making sure that these characters have very, you know, that they have relevant plot points moving forward, and they're developed in ways that feel like the characters that we know and love. So
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, I agree generally. I overall, I'm a little bit more optimistic about the DC universe than I think you are.
mm,
Uh, that might just be because I've always had a DC. I just have a bias, but I have. At the very least, with Justice League with Snyder, it feels like he has a game plan. He's going somewhere, and he's got big ideas, and he sort of wears his flaws on his shoulder, and he's got James Tiny in the fourth helping him out, which is good. I actually think it's a good combination, even though James Tiny in the fourth is exposition heavy. I don't mind a little bit of extra exposition. I don't mind being spoon fed
I don't
sometimes.
either. I don't either.
Sometimes you need that. And when you're dealing with ridiculously crazy concepts like Seven Forces and the Source Wall and all this other stuff, it's okay to spoon feed a reader once in a while. You have to do that. I also wish they would embrace a synopsis page. Okay,
Oh, that's
occasionally, but
there are two things that Marvel does in their publishing that I think that DC should incorporate. One definitely being the synopsis page. Two being the fact that Marvel includes free digital comics in all of their $4 books,
yes.
whereas DC started that and then stopped it and only does it with $5 books. So I don't know, but I think I mean, are there any hot books that you really feel the need to mention before we close out tonight?
Not. I'm not gonna. No, they're not hot enough to mention. I don't want to. I'll just give a shout out because we talked about it already, so we don't need to focus more on it. We've talked about it in different contexts already. Justice League Dark and Justice League. We never specifically mentioned them, but we referenced them. I do think that they're telling, Justice League Dark I prefer over Justice League. I got to give credit to Justice League Dark. It got me into Magic again. I was impressed with that. The other one I want to mention that I think is Justice League done right. I actually really like Jason Aaron's approach, his storytelling approach with Avengers, because it's big, it's high concept, but it's not. It's high concept, but it's not ridiculously complicated, and it's got epic moments, and it's 12 issues in, and it's leading to the War of the 12 Realms overlapping with Thor, and yet it just really doesn't feel inaccessible. And believe me, I don't know a lot about the Marvel universe as I know about DC, and I don't feel overwhelmed with it. And I can just buy the Avengers comic and know what the hell's going on. And
Yeah.
that's what I like.
No,
That's something where I can't say that necessarily about Justice League. you got to buy these other multiple things, and it feels so huge and epic. There's kind of a little bit of a sense of being overwhelmed with Justice League, that
Mhm.
I'm missing a part of the picture, and even when I'm not, and I always feel a little bit on edge, and and I feel a little bit more of a comfort zone with Avengers. I I prefer Justice League, but Avengers is a better read in my opinion.
No, I don't disagree with you there. My only complaint about Avengers is uh it was cool to see Ed McGuinness's art for a bit, but I'm kind of ready to be off of it. He's an artist that I only like in like small tastes, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. He's not
But
my favorite either. He's too reminiscent of Jack Kirby, and I'm going to say something that's sacrilegious, but I was never a Jack Kirby fan. I was always more of a Kurt Swan. I was never a big fan of Jack Kirby art, and I probably never will be. But that blockiness, he's got a blockiness to the
I
characters that doesn't quite jive with me.
I can't, yeah, I can't get with that on a regular book either. I think that I definitely like it in very tasteful approaches where you kind of dip it in every once in a while. Like if McGinnis were doing the annuals, I'd be entirely cool with that. And I think it was fun watching, reading McGinnis like for the first 2 or 3 issues maybe, but then, by the time we kept going with this, it's like, okay, it's fine. But in regards to Justice League Dark, I think it is by far the best Justice League book that's coming out right now. I think one thing that Tynan's doing that a lot of these big name writers have not been doing is keeping the portrayals and the interpretations of these characters consistent, while also, adding these very very different. Um, he has them react to these situations based on, or he's having them react to these very different situations that these characters have not faced before, and he's finding a great way to break new ground with them and move them into new territory. More specifically, Wonder Woman in the Witching Hour, you know, um, tying her, more deeply into the magical realms of the DC universe, and really giving her um, a really plausible character flaw for her to deal with, from
Yeah,
here on out. And it adds a little bit more to who she is as a leader and as an independent, strong character in the DC universe at the same time. Um, and
that's
I
the
think
best. James Tynion is writing Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's being written the best in the pages of Justice League Dark. Uh, and just as a quick side comment, if I've got a top 10 biggest disappointments for me in 2000 biggest disappointment in comics, and Wonder Woman is number 3 on my list for biggest disappointment. J. Willow Wilson, the hype, and I had such high expectations for her, and I'm just very disappointed with, she hasn't found Wonder Woman's voice yet. It's just really a disappointing debut for Jade Willow Wilson. I liked her Miss Marvel, and you know, uh, just doesn't good lord, you think, if you thought Bendis was a little off when he started Superman, Willow Wilson is way out to lunch with Wonder Woman, starting off with her. But it's just her first story arc, so she's ironing out some wrinkles. But again, James Tynion in the fourth, like you said, not to get off track there, but yeah, he nails it. He gets it, and he's not afraid to. He's not afraid to use some exposition. He's not afraid to spell things out.
and I think it's
And
absolutely necessary because the mystic side of the DC universe is something that writers are either too afraid to use or they're a little bit too sanguine in making executive decisions about it. Tynan's doing a great job at, again, kind of exploring very very new territory, but making it feel authentic and making it feel like these, for example, it's in a lot of ways he's retconning things, but it feels authentic. You know what I mean? I'm not losing out on anything by him creating the other kind, or these forces that have existed throughout the DC universe, and it makes sense as to why we haven't encountered them up until now. And again, I love the chemistry between the characters on the team. They feel
mm-hmm.
consistent for the most part. I think the first arc right before Witching Hour, like I love the way him and Alvaro Martinez play with John Constantine. I would read a book of Tynan and
Yep.
Martinez doing a Hellblazer title. I love the way they're doing Wonder Woman because up until recently she hadn't really gotten to take a leadership role in a team. So getting to see her finally do that, I think just feels appropriate. I like that we're getting something with Zatanna in it. I'm liking Swamp Thing, and I like the new direction that we're going. You know,
Well,
like
it's funny. It's funny that all the characters you're mentioning, you're not mentioning my favorite character that I think is arguably one of the most
Bobo.
highly developed, and that's Bobo the
Oh
detective
hell
chimp.
yeah!
There's that in one of the most, I thought, one of the better written issues of Tinian's run was the way he interplayed every sixth or seventh panel, or at the end of each page he'd say, "And the chimpanzee drinks."
Hmm.
And Bobo is basically like he's an alcoholic.
No, he's
Essentially, he
highly
drinks a lot,
relatable.
and he gets his intelligence from it. And I like the fact that he even drinks. The more he drinks it, he almost drinks to focus himself. And but you have sympathy for the character, and he doesn't want to have this bloody sword. He doesn't want to. He didn't want to inherit the night. He doesn't want to be the Night Master. He only became the Night Master because his best friend was the Night Master and was killed in the Pages of Metal.
Yeah,
And he just
and
wants to be a bartender at the Oblivion Bar and live his life and entertain people. And yet he finds himself forced to take on a larger role in this war on magic and the other kind. And it's brilliantly characterized. And when he talks to Wonder Woman, and the way Wonder Woman's spot on in character and inspiring him when he's in jail in the one issue, and they want to kill him because they Blue Devil does resents Bobo, and Blue Devil even warns Wonder Woman, that monkey's going to disappoint you. Just wait. He may have won the day now, but somehow, some way, he's going to disappoint you. And just brilliant characterizations.
And one of the things that I can really appreciate about Justice League Dark that I think is consistent with the things that I was searching for in the DC universe right now is that Tynan is breaking new ground and telling these incredibly, unique and new stories. But you know what? He's doing them with the characters that we know and with the characters that we love. He's putting them in new situations to expand upon them. You know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
not taking them and pulling a 180 and moving them this way because we need to do something different. He's taking them, and instead of making them go straight, maybe there's a fork in the road. Maybe they're facing a situation they've never dealt with before. And it just feels authentic to the progression of the character thus far, or at least in this modern age of DC Comics. It's a really solid book, and by far and unexpectedly, my favorite Justice League book coming out right now. Might even be my favorite team book.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is my favorite. It would be my favorite team book. In my mind, I actually separate. I put Super Sons and Young Justice, and I almost put them in a completely different category because they just feel so different in a really good way,
Mm-hmm.
but they're just different. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask if we can maybe wrap things up now,
Yeah.
because I need to have the rest, just to tell people I got my wisdom tooth extracted earlier today, and it's starting to act up a little bit. So
No, yeah, of course, man. Yeah, I was looking to close out myself. I think we hit all the major books, but especially, in spite of said tooth removal, I really appreciate you coming on and just being willing to have this chat with me, man.
yeah, no, it's good. It's good, and again, happy New Year to you, and happy New Year to everyone watching. And it's been a good talk. And I just want to quickly, I just want to give my top. I only came up with six, but my top six worst comics of 2010. Six for me was anything with Harley Quinn in it. Number 5 was Raven, Darter of Darkness. Number 4 is Electric Warrior. 3 is Martian Manhunter. 2 is Batman, and 1 is Heroes in Crisis.
Fair list.
So
Putting
there you go.
putting a really optimistic bookend to this episode.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but again, thank you guys so much for watching and staying up with us and engaging us in the chat and watching again. Make sure that you guys go check out my second episode of Comics Insider for a chance to win a copy of American Carnage #1 and Shazam #1. All the info in how to win is in the video. And make sure you guys go check out Comic Boom's channel as well. He puts out awesome commentaries and reviews in the books that are coming out and generates a lot of great conversation. Link to his channel is in the description below. So make sure you go subscribe to him. If you like this video, make sure to smack that like button and subscribe to my channel as well down below. And again, Boom, thank you so much for coming on, especially in spite of the tooth. And it's great to finally sit down and chat some comics with you, my friend.
Likewise.
All right. So this is going to be Dark Knight Nation and Comic Boom signing out for the night. Thank you guys for watching.